6 to the positive as far as our traditional. And then our ALE, we're just about even as far as that. We're actually a negative 1.54, but the two in total, 42.7. So 2 months in the books. Obviously, we will get an enrollment apportionment adjustment in January should this continue. I don't see any reason why this wouldn't manifest itself into a positive outcome come January as far as getting some additional enrollment for the remainder of our fiscal year. And then just some graphic representations I always present to you as far as how we're doing. Traditional contingent went up from the prior month. Our kindergarten AAFT, we're at 168 kindergartners. So that is the largest over the number of years under review in the history there, in the 5-year history. And then our enrollment, our AAFTE versus prior and so forth, the graph side.
Hold on that slide for a minute. This is, I think, kind of an important one to take a look at when you go back all the way to 9-10 and you see the decline we went in. It just was every year, and how it ended, and then it was kind of bouncing around, and then COVID hit in 2021. You see what happened?
Yeah.
It collapsed.
Yeah.
And then, here we are, 1940 right now. So,
Yeah, the COVID numbers obviously in 2021 are an anomaly. I mean, we put them there purely because it was a year. It is what what we had that particular year, but obviously it's a significant anomaly. But yeah, 1940, the first time within the span of this analysis that we're north of 1900. Been close before. 1920 we're at 1897, but not above 19.
So Dan, if I could just,
Yeah.
so we budgeted for 1900 and we're 42 over that, is that correct?
In total, Ed, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's all I wanted to tell you.
Yeah, we're 42.72.
Okay, so we
That
budgeted.
lower right-hand column in the lower right-hand corner is the key number.
So what we did at the end, remember we had 90 in ALE, moved 45 over to basic ed. We're 44 above that number.
Right.
So it's about 90 above what we thought we would have in person.
So if we can just hang on to them, we're good in January.
Get a paycheck in January.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ALE, like Dan said, basically we had 90, we chatted about it, we thought, well, we hope to retain about 50% of those, and that's been pretty close.
We've
Been
put a
pretty
limit of
close.
30 on that program, and we have people that want in it, and we're turning them away.
That's an ALE.
That is in Sultan Virtual Academy. Dozen names come across my desk in the last 2 weeks. We just don't have the staffing capacity to do it.
All right. And then there's also the tax rolls sheet is there. We'll start getting taxes. We'll start coming in here. They're starting to see them already, and we'll get a big chunk here at the end of our fall collection on our $3.5 million. Our fourth year, and then the next year will be subsequent years. Questions?
The question, just an ask, and it's a really on your new software.
Yeah.
Budget estimate chart, if we could make the scale a little bit more representative of the small area we're working on.
Sorry.
That's
The
all
graph
right.
you're talking about,
You know,
right?
It's the AL 2022-23 ALE enrollment versus budget estimate.
Mhm.
It's just, there's such a small anomaly there. If it
It'll make
were,
the scale
if we
look-
just went from like 42 to 50,
Yeah.
widened it up, we'd see that. And I was able to get it on another page.
I think just to
1.5.
clarify on that, Russ, we're at 31 or 30 in the SVA, and there's 15 or so.
I figured.
in it. So we're at the number.
Right. We're about 1.54 short based on the chart we had.
Yes,
Right.
correct. Yep. Only below budget, but you're 44.26 above traditional.
On the traditional.
So when you add those two together down in the lower right-hand corner where it says variance to budget, 44.26 to the positive, 1.54 to the negative, gives you a net of 42.72.
It's a small S, it's just the
Yeah,
chart.
no, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. I'll just kind of skinny that scale down a little bit, and we'll get that fixed.
All right.
You think I've got
Any
it?
other questions on that? We can move on to food service.
Yes. So I did, Kayla, if you want to bring that graph up there. This was an ad here. Real quick, I just
Yes,
sent
it was the
the pie chart. No, the
Oh.
pie chart for the accounts receivable.
Yeah, I don't think this was in our packet this time.
No, it was not. It was something I just
Oh,
put
okay.
together with today, and I thought, oh, this would be a nice visual, just a quick,
It's
quick
already under
visual.
so many.
That's all right, no problem.
I remember it.
I asked Kayla, I said, well, if I sent it to you this morning, could you just have it on your hard
Is that
drive?
an
And
email?
she was
Yeah,
kind enough
sorry.
to, kind enough to agree, so. And then, of course, today I
Was
probably
it
sent you
this-
100 emails, right?
this one?
So-
No.
No.
Nope, not that
It was
one.
earlier in the day.
It would have been a PDF.
Oh, okay.
Basically, I'll kind of set the stage a little bit, just while Kayla's bringing that up. Obviously, this year is the first year since 2019, back in 2019, 2020. Hey, there we go. 2019, 2020 was the last, what I'm calling normal year before COVID hit. That was a situation where we had our traditional statuses of free, reduced, and paid students. We started that school year, obviously COVID hit in the spring of '20. Things got severely interrupted, and the federal government, USDA, which funds the bulk of the food service program, is funded by federal dollars, put in some emergency orders where they allowed us to feed children for free, basically, for the remainder of that year and then the following 2 years. This year, we are back to, basically, kind of, if you want to teleport back to September of 2019, we are back to where things were September 2019, 3 years ago. We are classifying families as free, reduced, or paid, just like we did prior to COVID. Well, along with that, we had the legislation that came in, which was called the lunch shaming. It was known kind of as the lunch shaming, where we were unable to deny a student a meal based on their ability to pay. Well, those two factors. Number one, combining the fact that people have become accustomed to getting meals for free for a couple of years, and the fact that we are unable to deny students a meal based on their ability to pay. What we're seeing here already very early in this year is some issues related to unpaid debt, unpaid meal debt, okay? So this graph up here basically says, how is it spread? We're at about $4,700 is where we're at right now. That's an average of about $158 per day. If that were to continue over the remainder of this year, you would be probably in the high 20s, $28,000, $29,000, $30,000 of unpaid meal debt if that were to continue. Just extrapolate that out to the number of days. Where is this occurring? It's pretty much across the board. Gold Bar currently has about 27% of that. Sultan Elementary, this building has 35% of that. The high school has 28% of that. Middle school, only 10. But again, if you take secondary, middle school, high school, it's about a third, approximately a third for each. Well, that's just Gold Bar's a little bit less, but. So it's across the board. So what we're doing is, the last time we met was back in 2017. We had a focus group that had gotten together that basically kind of looked at some of these challenges, because these challenges were present, before COVID hit, so we were looking at some ways. But I sincerely feel that because of COVID, and again, people becoming accustomed to getting meals for free, it's harder to get them back into that mindset of, that waiver is over. So we will be, my plan is for us to convene a new focus group, because some of the people that participated in that group in 2017 are not with the district anymore, so we would kind of get a broad cross-section of people who can provide us valid input into this, and then look at some ways in which we can start to address this issue.
What's our procedure for reaching out to those students' families? And how many times do we reach out? I have no
Right.
idea how that
A
works.
million texts.
A million times.
Well, Dave was on that focus group back in 2017. He he was one of the members that I'll probably ask him to participate again this next time. Maybe Dave can touch on, we ceased those messages during COVID when everybody was eating for free, so we stopped those messages. We did reinstate them. We have low balance alerts, and then we have negative balance alerts that go out text and email and so forth. So,
So everybody's aware, a family in arrears knows.
At $5, they get your lunch balance is under $5.
Do they have to respond? Do we get a response that says, hey, times are tough, I need to get on the free and reduced bandwagon and fill out the paperwork? What do we see when somebody falls 10, 20? Do they not respond at all and just pretend it isn't happening, or?
There's a couple things that happen. Some do.
yeah, so ignore it. There is
The other
some-
part is getting the paperwork correct, meaning, we have people that go from one year to the next and their circumstances change.
Right.
So somebody might be paying, or think they're paying, and it really ends up that they qualify for free and reduced. And so,
Right.
once we did that and it's all verified, that would correct at least one or more of those people. It has been, I think just doing texts doesn't prove to be a very good method. It works with some. You have to make phone calls.
Right.
You have to talk to them.
Are we encouraging them if they are having struggles to complete that paperwork? Because I think
Yeah.
everybody's in agreement, we want kids to have a meal
Yeah.
and just, the
Used to
ones that
serve them-
can pay need to pay, and the ones that can't, we need to help them.
Used to serve an alternative meal, which we can't do. Kayla works on this
That was
every
my
day.
question, is when you have to serve a meal, I hate to keep going back to my past, but, we used to have that problem with crew meals. And if the company wasn't gonna provide a crew meal, they had to provide an energy bar, which was all the vitamins, minerals, proteins and stuff, and a carton of milk. And,
Yeah, we can't do it different now. It has to
Can't-
look and taste and
So
smell.
we can't do that?
You don't want a kid to go into lunch and get a meal that's not like everyone else's. That's gonna make that kid feel
People would make
horrible.
fun of them, is the theory.
They
And
made it illegal. We can't do
Right.
it. We
It
used to
happens.
serve them cheese sandwiches.
Right, that's-
And a carton of milk.
Correct, yeah, that's not the technical term, but they called it the lunch shaming bill. That was
Right.
kind of the non-technical term for what Gigi is saying is that based on the fact that other students could see that this student had a cheese sandwich and a carton of milk, they immediately identified them as somebody that couldn't afford to pay for their meals or whatever. So I understand
Well,
the
from a
intent of the
parent- From a
legislation.
parent standpoint, and of course, I had a couple of kids here, a couple of years ago. And, I watched that lunch thing, but one of the older boys spent it on cookies and chips.
Right.
And, and I was always coming up with this extra lunch money, from the power school or whatever it was, where I was tracking all that stuff. And I said, how can I get this kid to eat real food and not the junk food that's available?
Right. So that's a good point. I appreciate you mentioning that. These dollars are not à la carte. À la carte has to be paid for. We do not allow any charging for à la carte items, which would be beverages, chips, cookies, things like that.
so you get the standard lunch.
Those must be paid for. These are meals. These are the meals provided, meals, entrees provided to all students is where these dollars are accumulating from.
And if they're in arrears, they can't do à la carte either?
They still can, they have to pay for it, yes, it
That we
seems a
probably
bit,
should.
yes.
We
So yes, they
could, we could
could,
fix that a little bit.
they
What's
could,
happening to me is I couldn't control that they did the à la carte as a
well,
parent.
and we will abide by, if a parent or guardian reaches us, we will put a notation in their account, and the cashiers are to abide by that, so they would stop the student if they're just bringing chips through and wanting to buy chips. If it says in their student profile, do not allow student to charge, or only allow student to charge up to a certain amount, we do our best to abide by that. Do we catch 100% of those? No, there are times probably some of those slip through, because you get real busy and you maybe didn't see that notation on the screen as you're checking students out, but we will abide by that. Yeah, we certainly will attempt to abide by that as best we can. So, just, at this point, really just kind of a heads up to the board. It is an issue that is kind of creeping back just due to change in circumstances.
We could have forecast this.
Yeah, I came into this year, again, child nutrition is one of the hats that I wear here in the district, and I came into this year with a lot of uneasiness, just not knowing how things were gonna go after a couple of years of it being very different.
Well, I heard some talk, I don't know, last year sometime, that when this first started being talked about, hey, it's gonna go away, that there was some talk to continue. Basically, students of public education got a free lunch, and that obviously didn't make it anywhere.
I think it's a topic that you will see reintroduced in this legislative session. It's called Universal Free Meals is what it's called. And essentially, it would be a continuation of the program that we have just gone through over the past couple of years, where all students would eat for free. We would not be doing income determinations and collecting applications for determining level of benefit. So it would be very similar to what we've done for the past 2 years.
Save us money in the long run.
It could,
Do you know kind of off the top of your head, like, what it would cost if we just fed everyone a meal?
As far as just in our district, you're talking about?
Yeah.
I don't, but I could come up with a number for you on that. Because again, we have you get different reimbursement rates based off if a student that eats is classified as paid, you get the lowest amount of reimbursement. The federal government chips in the least amount. If you get a reduced, then there's that, and then the free is the highest. So if a student is classified as free, the district gets the highest level of reimbursement for that meal, so it varies depending on student.
Some of our kids bring their lunches.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just curious how we, because I think it'd be great to know that number, but I wonder if it were universal, would some of the kids that are now bringing their lunches maybe not, because it's free? And did the number of kids eating lunches go down this year when you have to pay for it versus what we ended last year?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, which would be expected.
Yeah.
You know, again, we had some students when the program initially started, it kind of started off slow, then it really ramped up, where numbers were quite high, and then they leveled off a little bit. I think some of the novelty of it maybe kind of wore off for some kids.
Remember where food prices are going today.
Right. I think it'd be interesting based on our, maybe if you take the highest number,
Mhm.
based on the enrollment at that time, so you get a percentage of current enrollment. So if we had 72%, 1,900 students, now we do 72%, if that was our highest of the current number, and give us a cost based on how much it costs for elementary, middle, high school.
Okay. And we do have a lot of, I know that
That'd be the
Sam, our
closest
Sodexo,
accurate number we can use, an expectation.
Sam, our Sodexo supervisor, he collects a lot of statistics because he reports those back to his superiors also for their monitoring how this account is doing for them. So, okay. Any other questions about food service child nutrition? Okay. I think I'm on again, aren't
You are.
I? One more time, okay.
Cash flow analysis, capital projects fund.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is you have a PDF, but on the screen behind you here, Kayla has brought up, because again, this is an Excel spreadsheet, and you can't do live spreadsheets within the document program that you have. So what I'd like to do is give you just a bit of background. This is obviously a planning document as we're moving into this phase of where the transportation co-op facility will be going full steam ahead here very soon, but we'll also have some smaller projects, fencing project here at SES, fencing project at the high school, looking at gutters at the high school, some smaller projects that are either have been completed or in the process of completion or wanting to complete. And trying to do these things in advance of our collection, because again, we haven't collected a penny of the Prop 2 dollars. Those won't come in start coming in until spring of next year. They're based on calendar year. So it is approved, it's on the books, but we have not yet to see that. So what we need to do is think of this, and we're mindful of the fact that Prop 2 was essentially a three-pronged issue. Essentially 50% was your transportation co-op building, about 25% was other capital projects under Charlie's direction, and 25% was basically a continuation of tech projects that were began under the now sunsetting prop previously. So what we did was we broke this down by area. So the first one is the trans co-op, is what you see up there. So we have various funding sources, state forest proceeds, external funding, capital levy proceeds with your tax collections, the costs related to the trans co-op project, and your repayments, and then what your ending cash is. And obviously the goal is to make sure in no month you go into the negative in the far right column. Okay, that's your running balance basically. So a couple of things. We had talked about previously when we came to you as far as needing to do a tax anticipation note. You can see in column C, which is the external funding, if it's a TAN or a tax anticipation note, it would be in black font. If it is an fund loan or activity, it would be in red font. There was some discussions with our bond counsel and with our financial advisor and so forth. We were able to change what we originally thought would be a $3.9 million tax anticipation note, and we're able to lower it to a $2.5 million tax anticipation note. That's the entry that you see there in December of '22. That's scheduled to close on the 16th of December. That is in process, it is in works. There will be documents that we brought at the meeting of November the 14th, which will be bond resolution and so forth related to that issue. Okay, so that is ongoing. The second thing you see is the $1.6 million down in November of '23, you can see is red, and that's what we're calling an interfund activity. What that means is we are going to be temporarily utilizing some impact fees that we're going to be using as to get us to our spring collection, okay? You can see the 1.6, you can see the two repayments over in the debt repayment line. The 2.5 million equates to the 2.6 million because that's plus interest. The 1.6, and then there you also see a 1.6 over in the column in red. That's related to essentially just that repayment. We're doing what's called an not intra-fund activity, where we're taking $1.6 million of impact fees for about 3 months, and then we're replenishing those with our spring collection for that year.
And we can do that at no interest rate to ourselves.
Correct, we do not owe ourselves any interest
It's
for that.
unique because we usually don't have that kind of cash available in an account, and it's in the account we're using, and so you borrow from yourself at no interest.
Right. We have
Just kind of lucky.
Saves us some interest instead of borrowing 3.9.
Yeah, as of August 31, right now, we are just a little north of $1.8 million in impact fees in capital projects fund, so that we will have resources sufficient to do that. But that's basically the inflows. The two inflows would be a tax anticipation note for $2.5 million, an intra-fund activity of $1.6 million, and then the tax collection start and everything stays positive. And you can see the payments there in the orange column E as far as the transportation co-op is concerned.
What's the percentage rate on the tan? Is it around 4%?
4.8.
4.83.
Okay, 483, yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over to the second one, Kayla. This is other cap, maybe that figure's a little bit bigger for me. This is other capital projects, so these would be other things under Charlie's direction, and you can see that there are some comments. Again, under other capital projects, the $175,000 is for the fencing project at the high school, the $64,837 is the fencing at this campus, and the $825, I believe, is the gutters at the high school, is what those three projects are in column F.
We don't have this in our packet. do we?
No, you don't, this is another tab, that's why we did it
Okay.
this way, you only had the first one, so that, we apologize that. So this one here, let's look at the various funding sources. You can see in column B, state forest proceeds. You might say, well, in the other column, you didn't have any. What I've done is from a cash flow, where state forest monies are recognized could be in any of multiple areas. We are recognizing is and giving the credit to Charlie's projects of those collections, okay? However, because we're trying to do a lot of work initially, you can see that our capital levy proceeds, the first three boxes that are dark blue are all zeros. The reason being is all those collections were given to the transportation co-op facility on the first tab. So if I'm giving to one, I can't give to the other. So the transportation co-op facility gets full of the first three collections, which would be the two in calendar year 23 and the first in calendar year 24, all go to the transportation co-op. What that means is I don't have any tax collections to put towards Charlie's projects, other than what he's starting with, which ties us into that you need to do some external funding by an LGO of about $1.5 million, okay? Again, these dates are slightly fluid. It says September 23, but we probably will have to do it sooner than that because he would like to do that project in summer of next year, so maybe it'll end up being June of 23 or something.
Sooner would be better, interest rates are climbing.
Correct, correct. But my point being is because your three boxes in the capital levy proceeds are all blank because all of those collections are being earmarked towards the transportation co-op, if you want to be able to do that route, you're going to have to borrow money via an LGO to do that, okay? And then you'll start to see over in column E in the red, you'll start to see then those semi-annual repayments of that obligation, in addition to the indebtedness that's already on the books, okay? And obviously, again, the goal is always to make sure that the ending cash balance, column G in orange there, always stays positive. And it does, as far as this is concerned. Then as you go down, you'll see Charlie's other projects are sprinkled for the scale. Kayla, if you want to scroll down a little bit. In column F there, again, you can start to see some other projects starting to pop up. And we can email this to you because there are embedded comments in each of those cells that ties to the project that we're talking about. Obviously, the sequencing of those projects might change a little bit, just availability of resources, contractors, things such as that. But what we tried to do is, in total, the amount that's at the bottom there is equal to the amount that was pledged in the Prop 2. So down there, the 4.378, that's the amount in the levy presentation in Prop 2 that was to be dedicated to Charlie's projects.
And at the end, after December 26th, we will be zeroed out on the loan we made.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Then the next one is tech. So here is Dave's. Again, Dave is, make that a little bit bigger, Kayla, if you could. So Dave is sunsetting from the end of a 4-year technology exclusive capital projects levy to where now he is one of 3 components of about 25% of the new capital projects levy. Couple things, under grants, there's the $300,000 there. We're in the process of claiming some prior expenditures, so that will be coming back and going into his account. You can see capital levy proceeds. In fall of '22, You can say, well, why is there money there and there wasn't the other one? Keep in mind, the fall collection this year is the last one that is specifically for technology. That's money to go into Dave's account. It's not to go into Charlie's or anybody else. So he gets that $552,000, that goes to tech, because that's his last collection on the prior sunsetting issue, okay? Go down, scroll down just a little bit if you could. So again, we're gonna need an LGO at some point too here, okay, until we get, because again, all these tax collections, we're earmarking all those early collections for your transportation co-op, so you're a little cash poor to start if you're trying to do projects, and obviously Dave has some ongoing expenses, annual replenishment, upgrading of laptops, there is some cost of staff related to technology and so forth, which he's obligated to. So we will have to do a small LGO of approximately $800,000, summer of '24-ish, somewhere, okay? And again,
Up above, if you could slide up, there's a grant for 300,000.
that term grant is a little I mean, they were grant-related monies, the monies were spent, and we're in the process of claiming those. There's been a little bit of a challenge in getting things set up properly to get those, but we will get those collected here within the next couple of months. And they're reimbursements.
I think it would be good for the board to have an analysis of cost of borrowing if we borrowed sooner at a lower interest rate versus what would the interest rate have to climb to make it beneficial to borrow earlier.
Okay.
Because we're gonna have interest accumulating for those months until we.
You
earlier
will.
than the other, so we need to see that in a spreadsheet to see which is the best benefit and how much interest would have to climb over that year period for it not to make sense to borrow earlier at a lower
Okay.
rate.
So the next tab, the red one there, basically keeps you a running total of your non-voted debt capacity. So your high water mark, based on what I had just shared with you, which is a combination of your tax anticipation note, your LGOs, your 3 LGOs that we talked about, you'll get to a high water mark of just under $6.2 million, okay? So you're still under your cap, and then it'll start to sunset as you start making payments, and that amount will start to decline. But I hear what you're saying, Russ. I'm not prepared this evening with that number, but I understand
No,
what
I
you're saying.
get it.
Yeah, so I'm just trying, what I was trying to do is like, okay, this is all great, but we need to be sure that with all these pieces, we're not over our debt capacity too, because again, we got 4 different issues that are going on, 3 LGOs and a TAN. And the combination of those, in addition to what is already on the books, can't exceed our
Right.
non-voting debt limit at any point in time.
And this won't.
It will not.
A
We're
little
still,
over 8 million.
yeah, a little over 8 million, and we're hitting like 6.2, so we're okay. The big thing that really helped us is the ability for us to use the impact fees, because again, if we had done 3.9 million versus 2.5, that gave you a $1.4 million delta. We would have been very, very close. At 3.9, we would have been very close to our debt limit.
And we have been paying another 4 point whatever
Yeah,
percent
4.83%.
on that
Yeah.
1.7 million.
So anyway, myself, Dan, the county, bond counsel, financial consultant, and so forth have all looked this over, and we feel it's a good plan. There's gonna be, obviously, we'll need to possibly be some changes. DNR monies, as it's coming in, is a key player as far as
It's not going to be
Charlie's. part.
5, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10.
Yeah, again, it's very, I spread the money evenly, it doesn't come in that way. I'm just looking at aggregate dollars over a specific period of time, and it comes in very clumpy. You'll have big months, you'll have none. You'll have a medium-sized month, and you'll have none.
Well, and if we didn't get any for 6 months, then we got a clump. That's why if we can borrow it earlier and it doesn't cost us paying interest, then I would say that makes
Yeah,
sense.
and the problem with the TAN is you have to pay it back 18 months later.
Right,
Yeah.
So we're
So
already
it'll
at the
borrow.
3rd month of the 18, so we don't have much time.
right.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dan, thanks for mentioning that. The tax anticipation note is due 6 months after the conclusion of the fiscal year of which the issue is undertaken. So we are in, what that means is February of '24.
So it's not 18 months, it could be,
It's a maximum of 18 months.
It could be
If you took
7
it out on
if you did it
September
at the end.
1st, it would be a maximum of 18 months, but every day that goes by, that duration gets shorter and shorter. Because that February of '24, again, it's always due 6 months after the close of the fiscal year. Our fiscal year closes August 31st of '23. 6 months thereafter, that
we
note
don't want
was
to do
due.
a July loan.
That no. If you want to make money as early in your fiscal year as you can, it's due in full. So the 2.6 million, or the 2.5 million plus accrued interest will be due in full in February of '24.
Actually, if you think about it, it's gonna come out the same. If you borrow early in the year because you're gonna need it later, or you borrow at the end of the year, it kind of still gets out about the same date, because you're adding on to the end of the year. So,
6 months after the conclusion, so it's gonna be February, the following February.
so we just have a deadline. It's not so many how many months, but we have a deadline 6 months after the school year ends.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, we understand and we're trying to be respectful of the board's wishes, is to do as many projects as quickly as possible. And so we are trying to do that, but again, we do have some limitations as far as our non-voted debt capacity, and things such as that. So, but I think we've come up with a good plan.
Email that to us,
Okay,
and then questions from the board.
thank you.
Next up, we have presentations, and it looks like Brianna saw you get in here. Good evening.
Good evening, directors. I am speaking on behalf of Sultan Education Association this evening during the committee report. So prior to meetings going virtual, we used to use this time to share out celebrations from our members, and we felt like it was time to bring that back. So during this time, I'd like to just share out some of the celebrations our members sent us. This is not necessarily all about our members, but it comes from our SCA members, and we like to just highlight different things in the buildings, their classrooms, their roles, and they like to call out their colleagues of what amazing things are happening here in the district. So tonight I have two from Dave Monson, who's a National Board Certified Counselor at Gold Bar Elementary. And he wanted to give a huge shout out to Miss Tia at Gold Bar. She does an amazing job managing recess staff, connecting with students, being in 3 places at once, responding at moments notice to supporting students, modeling respectful communication, and problem solving. She works tirelessly every day to support our students, and all the while staying positive and wanting the best for every student at our school. We couldn't do it without her. Thanks for being such an example of consistent positive support. The next shout out that Mr. Monson wanted to provide was to Ms. Anderson, the principal. There are so many responsibilities and pressures when running a school. We all know the job requires at the minimum managing expectations from students, staff, parents, communities, school board, OSPI, State of Washington, Sultan School District, and many more minute-by-minute decisions that need to be made. It is a massive undertaking each day that takes a special person to pull it off. He's thankful for how Miss Anderson shows up every day, ready to make the Gold Bar the best place it can be. The next comes from one of our teachers, Madison Berry, who's a 4th grade teacher at Gold Bar. There's a picture up there too, if you want to refer to that. But she's collecting yoga balls for her students to sit on. She has several students who have ADHD and struggle to sit still. So far, she's collected 11, and she's hoping to get enough for all students to be able to use this. She's noticed a drastic increase in student attention because their bodies can move around while they're working independently. These yoga balls will also improve student balance as well as core strength. These kids have really gotten into working for a yoga ball and have pride in having them. So that's one of our highlights from a classroom. Next, we go to Pete Reilly, who is a social studies and AVID teacher at the middle school and is also an Ed Tech ambassador. He wanted to highlight some awesome things AVID is doing this year at the middle school. Coming up at the end of this month, or I guess this week, grades 6, 7, and 8 are all going to Bellevue College for a college visit. And they had their first round of Student of the Month for the AVID program. And I also threw up some pictures, and I'm sure those are on social media somewhere too. That's some exciting highlights calling and celebrating some of our students. And along that same note, our highlight from the high school celebrates a student of the month, a Turk of the Month from Katie Power, who is the PE and health teacher, ASB advisor and head coach for volleyball. Joy is an all-star who went above and beyond to coordinate all things for homecoming, headed the plans for Turk Olympics, put together a well-themed Spirit Week, planned a last-minute community homecoming event, helps all around the school, plays volleyball, and is involved in ASB and is in Running Start. So great job to Joy for Turk of the Month too. So look forward to hopefully bringing some of these celebrations back to you over this year at some of the meetings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I don't see anybody else signed up to speak for PSE, Teamsters, PTA, Booster Clubs, or ASB. So we'll move on to Mike, teaching and learning update.
Good evening, directors. Thank you for the opportunity to share these things. I gave you a snapshot of two of the programs. Dan and I talked about the length of time, and I could be here the rest of your meeting going over everything I do. So I decided to give you small bits, and please ask questions if you need. So I'd like to concentrate today on the Highly Capable program. And I have with me Laura Blasco, who is our teacher on special assignment for the program, and she's going to be speaking specifically about professional learning. But I just wanted to go over last year's numbers. We had 27 elementary, 28 middle, and 29 high school students in our Highly Capable program. And of course, those are their cluster model in the elementary level, and then they go into an honors type program at the middle school, and then honors 9, 10, and then AP classes in the remaining high school. And so they could also be running START students, so there's many different varieties, but once they are identified, they continue services throughout the entire course of their schooling year. And then we also have quite a large number. This year's number, we have about 101, and we have a lot of our students that are coming in here at Sultan Elementary and into our schools. They're coming already identified. So if those families that are coming from Bellevue and Redmond and those places, and these families are very savvy about what they want for their kids, and they've gone through that identification. And as long as they have an identification process, then they actually receive services from us when they get here. So I'm going to ask Laura to talk about professional learning, and then I'll be back.
I also am just going to maybe reiterate just a little bit what Mike said, but this is the start of my 4th year as the teacher on special assignment here. And it's just really been kind of a steep learning curve of coming in and finding out all the parts and pieces. So just as a little bit of a background, similar to what Mike shared already, but we serve our HiCap students in what's known as a continuation of services. And so what that is just different ways we support at the various grade levels. So when students are qualified at the elementary schools, we have identified classrooms per grade level at both Sultan and Gold Bar. And that starts right at the 1st grade level. So students can be qualified as kindergartners and go right into a 1st grade cluster classroom. And then, like Mike said, at the middle school, we have honors classes in both ELA and math. And the high school, there's the honors courses as well as AP, college and the high school and running start. So that is the continuation once students are identified, that they go the full spectrum, because once you're identified, you stay identified until graduation. Teachers of all of these classes at all levels are provided the extra support through professional development. So last year, we were able to partner with Monroe School District, and we provided a really wonderful professional development experience with a renowned expert in the field. Her name's Austina Devonte. And we had a really large amount of the teachers from all 3 levels attend those 3 different days of training and provided clock hours. And then just this last weekend, several teachers and myself were able to attend the Washington Association of Educators of the Talented and Gifted, which is WATEG. And that was a 2-day conference held in Renton. And so we'll take the learning and provide it back to the teachers in small group settings and share some of that good training that we provided, or we were provided and we'll provide it out. So, and in several years prior, we had also training with differentiation and goal setting. So it's been in the 4 years I've been here, we've been able to provide professional development each year to those teachers.
Thank you, Laura. And so the last piece of the Highly Capable program is that we have our referral window open, is currently open, and will go through up until January when we do start our winter testing window. And we still do the COGAT Form 7, and we have a new one coming, and this is one of the things that our stakeholders group suggested that we include, and this is reference from both ESD and OSPI, but is to, in the first grade, do a non-verbal screening. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to, it actually increases those that haven't learned to read yet, because they can be gifted and not be able to read yet. And it also helps with the EL population, because it's nonverbal. So they're able to go through some exercises, and so we've already done the research, worked with Dave on technology pieces, and so we'll implement that in probably March is when we'll probably be giving that test to the first graders, and it will be a screening through the process. So again, trying to make sure, we are running right at about 5%, which is what the normal gifted, talented, highly capable program is throughout the state and the United States, so about 5% of the population. So, any questions about highly capable? Questions?
No?
Okay.
Looks like you're in the clear.
Going to do the second one, sorry, I'm going a little bit longer, so you see, that's why
You're doing great.
So, all right, so the teacher induction program. One of the things that we have really taken advantage of from OSPI and the funding through grants is what we call the BEST program, which is Beginning Educator Support Team. And she's going to the high school to see the volleyball games. I said, well, you come up to me with me at this point, so thank you, Laura. You got that, Laura. So we have several groups that we work with every year. The first year teachers, I've had as many as 10, 11, brand new first year right out of college. And this year we have 4, so it really just varies, but they get the most mentor time with me, and they also get the most mentor time with their mentors. So everyone is assigned a mentor as a first year and a second year, and so they have kind of a stepped gradual release of responsibility. So their mentor meets with them sometimes even weekly, sometimes many times a week, and they get all the way to the end of the school year, and we hopefully they're about, every other week or so, but, still that connection. The other thing is our contract, not part of the BEST program, but the SEA contract has a mentoring piece in there also. So anyone who comes in as a new teacher to the Sultan School District, maybe they have experience. I have someone who's in my class that goes over our evaluation framework, who has 30 years of experience. She's never been trained in our evaluation system. She's sitting in the class and participating just like everyone else. So that group right now, with going through the framework, is that's about 20 people. So we've hired 16, obviously, if I do my math right. We hired 16 that have experience. So it's a great thing for us. That enriches the conversation as we go through those classes. So they have 3 2-hour classes that they do September, October, November, and then I go back and I just have my first years. Those teachers can come and participate. So actually, my second year sitting over here in the front row. One of my second years. So there are several different groups, and then we also have a stakeholders group that has representation from principals and mentors and Dan and Andrea, SEA president. So it really is just trying to make sure that we are continuing to better ourselves and providing induction for all of our students. So I think I just went through all of those points. And so, questions on the induction program for?
No.
Questions? Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and we'll be back to share more.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Next up, Dr. Paul Douglas with our Student Services Update.
Good evening, directors, and like Mike, I'd probably be up here for a while, but I'll keep it brief.
All right. I do have a gavel.
I know. So the first thing is excuse my wrinkledness. Today I was out visiting a classroom and didn't anticipate being as involved as I was, so I got to do a little more hands-on work than I expected. But, so special education, some of the information I think Kayla has up there. One of the things that we talk about, special education is probably of the programs that I oversee is one of the most complicated. There's a lot of questions that come up on a regular basis. The form that I put out that has some of the data on it, one from the state, and the other one is what I send out to principals every month. And the one that I send out, that's the one I send out to principals every month, which gives them the number of special education students that are in their school, broken down by their LRE codes, which means their least restrictive environment. So LRE 1 is the least restrictive. That means it's 80% to 100% of the time they're in the general ed classroom. LRE 2 is 49% to 80%, and then 0 to 39 is LRE 3. So, as you can see.
What does that mean, actually?
So it means how, it breaks down to bottom line is how much time does that student spend in the general ed classroom? So if they're not out in the general ed environment, so the students that are in LRE 3, 0 to 39% of the time, they are out in the general ed classroom. In other words, most of the time, they are spending their time in a self-contained classroom.
And that's because they're disruptive, or?
It's because their needs can't be met in the general education classroom. So they can't be met academically or from a behavior standpoint.
And the teacher has to decide that, I presume?
It comes down to the team, comes down to the IEP team making that decision. And so that would include the parent part of that, the general education teachers part of that, special education teacher, administrators.
So this is kind of determined before they actually go to classroom, then, this number of percentage of time?
It can be, yeah. It's part of once the evaluation is done. Then at the time that the evaluation is done, the IEP team looks at the evaluation data and then determines what's the appropriate placement.
I'm sorry, I had that flipped in my head. I thought it was the other way around, so,
Yeah,
okay.
no, but that's a good question, and it can change. So an example of that is, so if you have a student that is doing really well, for example, we would meet with that student and their IEP team, and they could actually change their placement at that time. So we have several students right now that are what we call, they're in LRE 2. They're spending the majority of their time, well, about 50% of their time they're in general ed versus special ed. So we're now increasing their time in general ed, so they're now moving up to LRE 1 versus being in LRE 2. And like I said, special ed is complicated, but the LRE 3, the state is actually, it's a punishment for us to have students in LRE 3, the way they're funding it for the next couple of years at the current time. And so it's an emphasis for us to move from our kids that are in LRE 3 to LRE 2 or LRE 1. And that's the emphasis on getting students out into the general ed classroom, which instead of emphasizing funding, we're emphasizing what's the best environment for our students to learn. The nice thing is, this is a emphasis that we've had for the last several years, is moving our students into general education classrooms so they're exposed to the general ed curriculum as much as possible. And that's been a strong emphasis for all our staff. So that's, as we look at these numbers, it's numbers that we look at every month. We also look at the other data that Kayla has here. It comes to us from the state and looks at, from an equity standpoint, how many of our kids are qualifying by different categories and demographics. So the one up there, I can't read it quite, my vision's not quite that good, Kayla. So students, you'll see on the one box, the two columns on the right, it says percentage of students with disabilities and the percentage of multilingual students with disabilities. So that data is extremely important when you're looking at the number of students that we're qualifying that are either EL students or they have a first language in the home that is not English. And so how many of those students are we qualifying? And then we dig into why is that occurring. So, and then the categories for that, if you look at down there for specific learning disability, we're seeing, go ahead. Yeah, just stick with the hard numbers before we get to the graph there. So we look at 61.2% of our students that qualify, or 61.2% of students with multiple languages or multilingual are qualifying for specific learning disability. So our question is why? And that's part of trying to figure out why is that happening.
If they struggle in English, would that be one of the factors that could put them into that
It
system?
can't be one of the
Okay,
factors.
all right,
That's-
good.
No, that's a great question, because that's, when we look at, when psychologists go in, it's just because a student speaks a different language, or they're English language learner, it doesn't mean that automatically qualifies it because it can't speak English. So we look at different assessments, like in their home language is one way, and we have some other tools that we use to determine, is it a disability or is it a language deficit? And that's really important to look at those two, and are we making the correct decisions around that? So that's why specifically that one, I highlight and try and dig down deeper, and why is that happening? And then we had another category up there that's fairly high around communication disorders. So, and you'll notice that autism is on the rise both in Sultan, but pretty much everywhere right now. So,
I have a question before we go too far. On the first chart that shows all of the LRE 1, 2, and 3, I noticed there's a discrepancy between Sultan Elementary and Gold Bar Elementary in like LRE 2. You know, there's almost 10 times as many LRE 2. Are we, if a student is in that category, do we try to put them in one elementary school, or is it just?
no, it just breaks down to where they are. So an example of, I believe it's like Gold Bar has more kids in LRE 2. I think that's
Gold Bar has 3,
Three.
and Sultan Elementary has 29.
right. So, you know, looking at that, then it comes down to really the program that they're in. So both Gold Bar and Sultan both have SLC classrooms. And so how many of those students that are in the SLC classroom are being integrated into the mainstream classrooms? That's really what that's showing on those particular numbers.
Okay.
I think what you'll see is that number will increase in Gold Bar as the year goes on. In fact, probably it has increased since I sent that out a couple weeks ago, just because the number of students they have in their SLC program, I would say only 3 of them are in the 0 to 39% right now.
But as a percentage, I think they're about the same. Sultan Elementary has total 86, and Gold Bar has 48, so, I mean.
Yeah, and some of them, they're pretty close.
Yeah.
And in that, it's just what category they're in.
Right. Near the bottom, it has PRE, what is that?
Pre-K?
Yeah. That's our preschool.
Okay, so,
Developmental preschool.
but I mean, you do it on the charts, LRE 1, 2, 3, and in pre, it starts with 3 and 2, so are those numbers reversed?
No,
You have
so our developmental preschool is self-contained 100%. So those students don't interact with general ed students
So
at all.
they're all LR 3 then?
Yeah, because right now, we don't have a general ed
Ah, okay.
preschool, although that's.
We're gonna become experts by the end of this
Oh, yeah,
meeting.
well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be certified here if I keep this up.
You can take my job here pretty soon. Like I said, it's kind of complicated.
I think we'll pass.
You're gonna have to go back and tell me what FAPE is, though.
So that's free appropriate public education, that's part of IDEA. See, the beauty of special ed, it just adds more acronyms.
Yeah, we really need more
Right.
education.
So that's kind of the basic summary. I don't want to go too long in it, but I'm hoping that as we go through the year, we can bring in some of the other programs that are under student services and get an opportunity to see.
Well, as you discover what the 61.29% of our English second language or multiple language students, what's causing them to fall into that specific learning disability, I'd be curious, I think the board would be curious what
Yeah.
it is.
No, I have some idea or a hypothesis, but I need to be able to prove that it's, so when I prove it.
Bring us science.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Thank you.
yeah, you bet.
Any questions?
Well, I hate to jump the gun a little bit, but there's, on your work program that we've got coming up in the coordination there, and your work programs is specifically with IEP, or a lot of IEP then.
That's the
So-
target demographic, yes.
So how does this LRE 1 and 2 and 3 work there?
Because that's an after-school program.
Yeah.
So, and Morgan will be able to explain a little bit more about her.
Okay, well, I just,
Yeah.
yeah, we can get to that.
Yeah, so the LRE doesn't take place for after-school activities. All students have the ability to access after-school activities.
Oh, okay. So she's an expert in all this special ed too then?
She is, and she's awesome. She actually, most of her kids are LRE too.
Oh, wow. Let's do the ski club together.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
I think I'm up next, so I'll just kind of hang
You
on
are.
for me.
Yeah, that's right.
Approval of Consejo Counseling MOU, am I saying that properly?
Yeah, you're right. So
Okay.
Consejo, so if you guys remember from last year, Consejo, we did an MOU with them, and that's the counseling group. They come out of Seattle. They now cover pretty much most of the west side of the state in terms of offering services to students, families. And so theirs is, they have a virtual platform as well as an in-person platform. So last year, we primarily did virtual with them, just because of the number of students that we had didn't reach the threshold to have an in-person counselor. This year, we've met that threshold, and we do have an in-person counselor from Consejo. They actually started today, so.
So they
So we
come, they're actually come from Seattle and come up?
They actually come from, so the main company is in Seattle,
Right.
but now they're spread up and down the whole west side here. So they come from the Snohomish group that extends from Snohomish to Skagit. And so they come from, I think they're from the Everett area for this particular council.
But we actually have a physical person.
We do,
that we
and they
talk
come to
face-to-face.
all four of our schools.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We should probably approve this if they started today.
I know.
How many days a week?
They are here 5 days a week, so they do, they're at each school at least one day, and then at the high school, they're a day and a half. I think.
Good.
Questions?
No,
No.
no.
I'll ask for a motion to approve our memorandum of understanding with Consejo Counseling.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Back to Mike. Thank you.
Good evening again. So I'm now back with the highly capable plan. Let's see, we just did this in the spring because it's due now, and I usually put it in. I don't know what happened last year. We kind of got out of sync. So this is just the highly capable plan that was just like the one last year. It has to come to the board every year, and I included it in your packet. So hopefully, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer. But our recommendation is that we approve so we can get it all taken care of.
Questions?
No questions.
Pretty easy. I have no questions, so I ask for approval of the 22-23 district highly capable plan.
So moved.
It's almost a harmony there. Okay.
I always like
Cindy
to
can
have,
have-
Mike, I did some homework in the the RDC and state figures and report card and all that, going to college and all that stuff, graduates from high school here. So I'd like to talk to you about that someday,
Okay.
in regard to all of that.
Okay.
So I don't want to do that here tonight.
All right. I know where his
And I-
office is. Okay. So I couldn't tell who honestly made that motion.
She can have it.
So we'll give it to Cindy. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Yeah, and you guys get
Thank you.
together. Next up, plan to discuss tuition-based preschool. We have Dan, Heather, and
And I
Aubrey.
think they left me alone.
I think you're better do
So
this right.
this is, this particular issue is a long-standing goal, not necessarily in a tuition-based preschool, but early learning. And in acknowledgement of, the WAC kids or the kindergarten assessment and the readiness, we typically see kids in the valley, showing up for kindergarten, not always ready to be part of it. And so, a few years ago, Mike and I and, several of us here, we added transitional kindergarten, as a program by the state. And so that is designed for a group of kids that aren't tied to any kind of preschool or learning daycare or whatnot, but it's only got 15 slots. And it ends up generating apportionment, and so the program basically pays for itself. It's at Gold Bar, but this year alone, I think we have 183 kindergarten and transitional kindergarten kids. And that number is growing. And that's just the ones that are here. And so then you've got 4-year-olds, and you've got 3-year-olds, and you've got 2-year-olds. And what is happening in, each household with those young kids differs greatly. And so you try to figure out ways that you can help the development before they reach school, is really what it comes down to, for lack of a better word. I know us as a group have had discussions about, reaching out to daycares and trying to coordinate some of the activities, and we had pretty grand plans to do it. When we first were gonna start transitional kindergarten, the day that school shut down for COVID, we were scheduled to go on a visit and had to cancel. And so we ended up following through and putting it in. But we, in conversation with the elementary principals, this whole notion of having a lot of families come into the offices, and they come into the district office wondering what's available. And these are many of the new families to the community. And I can't tell you, there's been more in the last 2 months than I've seen probably in 5 years that have requested access to early learning opportunities. And so there's a number of different ways you can approach this. This idea was to, basically gather some information through a survey process that was done to start with at the Education Jamboree, and then just pushed out in a, not a real planned way, but out on Facebook, and I think they got 50 responses, and so I sent you the actual responses. Most of them are, they took it serious, some didn't, but the idea is, with this, is to try to gather some more information, engage the board in that discussion, and see where you are as far as what we do there, because I think when you're playing catch-up from the minute many kids step into kindergarten, when we get the SBAC scores that I'm going to go over later, you can see there's a relationship in some of it. And having kids show up with ready to roll and ready to go is really what we're trying to do the best that we can. And so this is one component of a multifaceted way to meet needs. And there are some preschools, there just aren't many. And
Well, I think if you read the news and watch what media is, we're under the gun to make certainly improve test scores. And I think we do absolutely spend as much of our energy on improving how our students, it's not just the test scores, it's that they leave our schools with a full education. At the same time as we're working on that, if there's a group that can be working on making certain that the quality of the students enrolling in kindergarten, and quality can be a catchy word or touchy word there, all of the students are valuable, but how the quality of their pre-readiness for kindergarten is improved, I think that would go a long way in making certain that the changes we make in the school are more rapidly seen in test scores in our elementary. When we looked at those tests or the readiness numbers for kindergarten a couple years ago, we found that our students, about 20-some% were passing all of the areas that you would really want to be ready for kindergarten, which some school districts had over 75% of their kindergarten students were ready. That's a huge advantage to those teachers in those schools when we can be so much more ready, and the teacher can start working on more advanced things instead of 75% of classes are ready for kindergarten. So I know there's going to be a lot of push, and Ed, I talked about it a little bit, to make certain we improve how our students are doing. I see this as another job, and it probably takes another group of people, and if it pays for itself, that's a win-win. That's my 1.5 cents worth.
I think the earlier we can get the kids, the better. I mean,
Well, I
I
think
agree with what you just said.
Yeah, the earlier we can get the kids to perform at what we need at the kindergarten is the actual issue. And I think I would like to see if we could promote our private industry community to provide preschool, I guess we're short on preschool spots.
Everywhere is right.
Yeah, but I think it would be much better to spread this job out into the community rather than, I think our task is to bring these scores up K through 12. And if we go expanding that down into the lower pre-kindergarten, I just don't think the effort's gonna help us. It'll make us more broader and less specific. And, but anyway, I'd like to try to see if we have in the community here people that will actually qualify and set up and start preschools and making them available. I know my kids went to preschool in Gold Bar. That lady, I think she's still around teaching preschool actually 60 years ago, or whatever.
Well, and I think.
But anyway, I'd like to look into that rather than us branching out into another whole arm of trying to teach and learn.
Well, and we should look at how kids going through these various preschools, if they're going through that preschool and they're in the 25% that are ready, I multiply, that's great. But if the kids going through those preschools are in the 75% not ready,
No, I think you'll.
you know, then we'd have a real
Yeah.
problem with, you know,
If we
building
do
a
our-
program that's
If we
failing.
do our own, then we know the skills and what we're teaching them is what we need them to know when they get into kindergarten.
And maybe it's a
So our scores can
cooperative.
go up.
Yeah, I don't, you know, I don't think there's, one of the things we've noticed, this is unofficial data, but, you know, the principals will ask, or they'll look at data from some of the kids in the early grades, and they'll look at their, you know, who has had previous preschool and who has not. And I think it's pretty clear data that, that kids that come to us have those experiences more than those that grow up here. And that's really availability, it's access. And so I don't know that there's one organization or one, you know, place that's gonna capture them all. I think it's several components. And what we're trying to do here is not, you know, not make it so difficult that we can't do all we're trying to do. We're trying to, you know, offer a, you know, preschool experience for those that, you know, can and are willing to pay a tuition to do it. Because not all of the daycares have a real education component to it, so.
And not many people can afford $1,500 a month to do the Goddard in Monroe. Yeah,
Have your
that's,
data pulled up,
Yeah.
I think the VOA over here is doing a type of a preschool, right?
They're doing what's called ECAP, and they have a lot of
So
slots.
that
but you have-
doesn't require money.
No, you have to qualify
Right.
for it, though, and that's what I mean by components. You
Yeah.
have Grace Fellowship, I think, does one, ECAP is one, we have developmental preschool. We're trying to, you know, trying to make it so everybody has an opportunity. And us having our own tuition-based would allow us a little bit of control to say, well, if there's nothing else available, here's the way we can do it here, and here's what it costs. So,
I think it would be interesting if, you know, this group that you're asking for us to move the idea forward with specific planning benchmarks. I think one would be, what is the curriculum for this? And if we started one in the public sector, that curriculum should be available for ECAP and every other, because if that's the things that our school district says our students need, that's what everybody should be using, because right now it looks like we have potentially 10 different, 12, 14 different preschool systems.
You know, we started that some years ago.
We did, and we got derailed on a few projects
Yeah.
during COVID, and I think this is one of
Back
those.
on that rail.
Yes. So I think I would like to see us move forward with doing something, because doing nothing isn't, we'll continue getting what we're getting. And if the community is coming to us and asking for it, I think at the least we need to explore what it would be. And I don't think we have to exclude one idea or the other. I think improving what the public has to offer and improving what the private sector, because I'm not certain that all private sector preschools are gonna provide what we want. I bet all of them are better than none, because if they're just learning their ABCs and how to hold the book and how to behave and follow rules and get in line, all of those things that some of our students come to school. I had a kindergarten teacher tell me, I don't know, I was probably my first 5 or 10 years on the board, that they had students that didn't know how to hold a book. They couldn't tell which way was up and which way was down. And I hope no one in the room has students, unless they have a special learning disability, that the student doesn't show up to kindergarten not knowing how to hold a book. So, I don't know exactly what you're asking from the board.
I think to gather more data.
I think we need to.
This is really trying to keep that notion of an early learning goal alive. And, you know, and our commitment to it, however it happens. I wish I could go talk to somebody that I knew exactly what they did and said, hey, it would be great if you could move into our community and serve, you know, kids age 3 and 4, serve 150 of them. But I don't know that I can pull that off,
Right.
you know? I'm not sure that I can make that happen.
Well, and it could be funded, and I do understand, Ed, your concern, and I think it's a just one. We only have so many people that can do so many jobs.
Well, it's an impact on Charlie, it's an impact on administration, it's an impact that We
It's-
just add on top
It
of
is,
everything, yeah.
and I think we have to try, yes.
But the idea about curriculum, can we start researching that? I mean, that seems like the core number one.
Yeah, I was
place to
gonna
go.
ask Mike, you talk about the appropriate curriculum for something like this. Some of it's really focused on correct and effective play. How do you
Right.
interact
Right.
properly? How do you share properly? How do you learn one-to-one correspondence, you learn different things, but it isn't just stick a book in their hands from, day one and off you go. Sit and,
Well, a lot of daycares were closed the last couple of years, or had reduced, so we may even see it
We
get
can
worse before it gets
research
better.
curriculum, for sure.
Yeah.
Did you have a
I was
question?
just listening and thinking and remembering back when my son and what I did at home with him. And one thing that might be really helpful is to get some of the kindergarten teachers together and put together a packet and say, this is
I think
what
we
we
did that,
would
you're right.
love for your kids to learn by the time they come to school. And here is some online, simple learning, fun games that you can play with your child. So if they come into elementaries, you can say, here's for your 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds to
Yep.
get them ready. Even if they don't go to preschool, but here's some things that you can, games that you can play with them.
Right. Yeah, I didn't go to preschool, and
Yeah.
my mom, we were doing puzzles and reading and,
That's your problem.
you hope there's more than one, buddy. But we always use our own experiences, and some of my grandkids went to preschool, and they're all ready because one way or another, they got a preschool, whether it was with mom and dad at home
Yeah.
or in a formal setting, but
But some parents.
we have to set the expectation in the
They
packet
have no
starts
clue
it.
as to what, either they don't remember going through school.
I say shame on them, but you are correct.
Yeah, they just forget, and then their lives is so busy, but if they have something tangible that it's easy to look up on YouTube, here's a counting game that you can,
Right.
that kind of stuff. And Allison, Trish, all of those guys are awesome about knowing good things to.
I think that's part of what I think when we started this, Ed, we had that.
We actually published that.
Yeah, and so having it at the district office, handing it out, I think that's part of it. This is not here's the fix and we'll fix it. Even if we have the preschool, we gotta get the parents to make certain they come, and we gotta get it takes parenting that's maybe above the abilities of some of the parents where they're at now. So we have to teach parents they almost need you had a kid, here's what to do so that they're ready. Because I think that's a big portion of it. With the numbers we're seeing, it's busy parents or parents that don't find the time or can't make the time to do those counting games and all of those things that, they have to know their ABC. I mean, it's simple stuff, but we're not seeing students all come ready. We can dig that.
So we'll refine it, we'll come back in a month with a more clarifying sort of set of circumstances and.
And let Audrey and Heather know I may stop in and see them to discuss that. I know they're busy.
Yeah, they're good, yeah.
Okay, no action is necessary on that, so we'll move on to portable bathrooms, Sultan Elementary, Sultan High School.
Charlie?
Okay. So, specifically this campus, we've added 4 classrooms, and the more exterior classrooms we add, the more burden it is on the restrooms and the proximity of the restrooms to those classrooms. With the addition of the last 4 classrooms, we are hoping to get some restrooms in the vicinity of those rooms right now they walk to the gym, which is not a long walk, but it's a long unsupervised walk. They kind of walk down there, do their own thing and come back. Where if we had a restroom that was closer by, the instructional time would be increased.
So I'm just kind of wondering, because as we were adding these portables, did we not plan for bathrooms? There's no bathrooms in the portable?
Correct. There's no bathrooms.
So you have there's 2 parts to that. Adding them in a portable, the cost is just extraordinary.
Well, I mean, I guess I didn't, as we were doing this, it never occurred to me that we were creating places with no bathrooms. I guess I didn't, I guess I didn't ask the question then. So it looked like we're looking at a kind of a planning problem that we didn't do.
Well, there's, you know, anytime you add a portable, there's some sort of a ripple effect.
And then there should have been a discussion about that too.
I know they didn't have bathrooms, because I've been in them.
I mean, I realized they
Well,
didn't
yeah.
have bathrooms, but I guess I was also kind of surprised when I read this and it says we're in a critical situation now. And
Yeah,
I'm
how
thinking,
did we
wow,
get there?
how did we get to critical with no conversation? How did that happen?
Well, a lot of that has to do with the circumstance, where the classrooms were placed. We tried a alternative plan that is working, but it's not working well. And this campus wasn't built for as many students as it has. The bathrooms are mostly within the brick and mortar or at this other side of the campus. That end of the campus just basically has the gym, and there's external bathrooms in the quad.
I'm more interested in, you know, not going back and casting blame, more what are our options here? And I've read through the, of course, I even experienced some of this porta potties this summer in terms of cost. We had events where at the beginning of the spring, they were $200. And in the middle of July, it was $900 for a porta potty, and if you wanted a fancy one, it was $1,400. I mean, I just couldn't believe the cost that went up like that. So I was talking with Dan today, I'm thinking, you know, I don't know how, there are amounts where we even don't have to go out to bid, but I know that they have restrooms in the administration office, so there must be a drain line somewhere near there. And I don't know why we can't pour a slab of concrete, some 2x4s and a metal roof and put in some bathrooms.
They'd still be walking all the way across the playground. We still have that
What do you mean, they'd be right here?
There's portables down
Yeah,
there.
portables
All the way
down
down
the
to the
gym.
bus drive.
What about a mobile?
Well, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, we haven't looked at the geometry of this thing.
Yeah,
But-
the examples that we've looked at are more of like a trailer, a mobile
Yeah.
portable potty that has multiple stations.
This would be another little portable.
But
And
the rent, I mean,
self-contained portable that, then,
so what's the cost at the end of the year?
a lot.
Well, I mean,
96,000 a year is the cheapest one, I think, give or take.
and we don't own anything, and besides, 96,000 a year doesn't do the cleaning.
Correct. There's
So, I
some,
mean,
there's some numbers in there for potential cleanings.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm more interested in some kind of a build our own, rather than spending that kind of money. I mean, for $100,000, I think I can put you a couple of buildings here with not even an outhouse, it'd be a flushing toilet. So I'd like to consider some permanent fix here.
The portables in the trailers are flushing toilets. They, you run a water line to it, and it has a containment system that does get evacuated once a week or twice a week. depending
It's
on
a lot nicer than the typical.
Yeah.
If you've been to
I-
Stockton,
What if we
Yeah.
bought one of those instead of paid
You can do that too.
But you still have to have it serviced. And not only that, those things
Well,
don't,
and I guess I need to know how much, where we would put them. I mean, there's more questions that I have here. I agree, $96,000 a year plus, it's a tremendous expense.
and I can tell you that those things are not built to take kids on a 7 days a week or whatever it happens to be, they'll be
They'd have to be
destroyed.
serviced a lot,
Yeah.
probably.
Well, I mean, the interior will be destroyed.
And so these would be paid for, whether it's you build it or not, out of impact fees. It wouldn't come from general fund.
Right. But I mean, anyway.
What about, I mean, I'm just, because we haven't discussed this, for 96,000, let's say with servicing, it's gonna be 125,000 a year. I think we could hire 2 people that escort, I mean, the safety is the first priority. I mean, whether you walk 50 feet to a restroom or 150, it disrupts classroom for that additional time, but I'm just wondering if we, as as a temporary fix, we couldn't have somebody escorting kids back and forth so they're not out there walking alone and explore a permanent solution. It, you know, it's funny that we would build a permanent toilet when we use temporary classrooms. I find that,
I struggled with that,
I find that
you know, but
I don't
I
know.
understand how we got.
ironic, because we should, I'd almost rather have the other, but we have now an emergency that we're all surprised with. I was surprised by it.
Well, when you say emergency, there's strong demand. I don't know that I don't want to contradict you. I don't know
If the
that
kids
I-
were closer,
This campus is, there's a lot of square feet in this campus now. We've added, over the last few years, we've added 8 exterior classrooms. That's, you know, there's more cleaning, we eat lunches in the classrooms. There's a lot of ripple effect from putting these in, and one of those ripples is, the bathrooms are, there's a lot of kids going into a few bathrooms.
And they're all walking in the rain to
Right.
get to those
In the high
bathrooms.
school even more so, because at least at the elementary level, you have centralized bathrooms at each end of these buildings.
right,
Where at the high school,
you gotta walk
you
all the way.
have the bathrooms in the vocational educational building, and then you have in the main building and also by the commons. So there's a trek if you're out in the portable 13, which is the furthest one away.
I've heard about it.
It's a trek.
Yeah.
And especially, you know, for staff members too. I mean, staff members, their restrooms clear back by the office. I mean, they can use the general one, but they probably don't.
At the elementary school, if the classrooms didn't have the problem of walking in the rain and the unattended students, is the volume of traffic exceeding the restroom's abilities, or is it just those other issues that are really pushing it?
You know, I specifically don't have an answer for that. I know that Aubrey's concern was, you know, educational time is one of
Yeah.
the things. Having the students, a 5-minute break is a 10-minute break. And so then, you know, all that educational
Yeah.
time gets lost.
There's only like 1 or 2 stalls in each, there's not a lot.
No, there's not a lot, but at least that they're in a closer proximity within the building. They have a boys and girls restroom for 4 or 5
So I don't know if you
classrooms.
guys recall, you talked about the district office, day before the last day of school last year, broken water main.
I remember, yeah.
And so
Line on the door.
we opened up the district office, we're the only bathrooms available. What a zoo. I'm telling you, a zoo.
Well, there's, what, how many-
600 kids going in
using
and
one
out. It
bathroom?
was just, it was insane watching what was going on in there. But parents didn't have to adjust their work schedule. We're all still alive to talk about it. And
And kids have a story they'll tell.
Kids have a story, and I have adults that first opportunity to have them.
Probably really cool to go to the administrative office. Probably no need.
I'm gonna go again.
Charlie, let's assume that we approved some method of this. Are these yearly contracts, monthly contracts?
They're kind of all over the board, depending on the company. I think the most advantageous would be to purchase the restroom and then use the service for the cleaning.
So we've talked about this internally before, and I brought up the purchase word, you know, or the purchase option. And I think that's the way we should look at it. The costs are just unreal. And
It's
I-
crazy.
And we, you know, our custodians would clean them, you know, daily, but it would still have to be an evacuation truck that came by to.
Well, and I think at the time we're discussing that, I think we do need to look into, instead of buying this what could we, and how hard would it be to build something that's in the right spot out there that has a sewer to it? And I know that that's gonna take some math doing, but I think for us to make a good decision, we at least need to know what that costs. If it's 20% more than buying a portable that wouldn't be as well built as if we built something, I think I need to know.
And where to put that.
I know, and where would we put it? Because we gotta figure out where to put this.
Right.
Well, and we have
It's
to
easier
think
to,
about,
it's easier to locate something on wheels that is,
So if we put something on wheels and then put a real sewer to it, how much would that cost?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, so we don't have this forever service fee.
Plus, we have to consider the land use and the fact that we do have a plan to replace the school at some point.
Yes. And
I was-
portables,
That is the end game
those are
goal.
temporary, they're
Yeah.
supposed to be temporary classrooms. You knew that? Thanks for
Some
reminding
of
me.
our, some of our temporary classrooms are
Fairly permanent.
25
Fairly
years old.
permanent. Yeah.
But we'll get some more information, and we're making it today, it's just, you know, there's, presume there's gonna be more kids coming, and,
And if we're having an unsafe condition where students are going back and forth and not being managed, we need to look into that.
Right, well, it's secure because we have a
Fence.
fully fenced campus, which is.
But do we have
nice.
somebody watching Timmy and Sally? That's why not nobody's kids' names anymore, but that they're watching, getting from one into the other.
No, they go on their own.
Right. Okay. Obviously, it's an issue that the principals are dealing with, so we need to get information as quickly as we can to figure out how we move.
What kind of a cost it's going to be on a contract to have somebody come and help them?
Apparently, I need to get into the porta potty business and
Oh, yeah,
renting.
I'm telling you.
This is some pretty good money.
It's a big deal.
I don't wanna be in this business. No. All right. Thank you, Charlie. School bus driver incentive program. Charlie, you're up again.
Me again. So, nationally, there's a shortage of bus drivers. A lot of districts throughout the state have created incentive plans for recruiting and bringing bodies in to become bus drivers. The typical bus driver is a mom or a parent of a school-age student or a retiree.
Right.
And to, you know, when the neighboring districts have an incentive plan and a little bit higher pay, it's hard to pull them our way, so we're trying to just keep up with the Joneses, I guess, and bring them to us. One good thing is, you know, we have our atmosphere as far as transportation department is a lot better than some, and we have been able to steal drivers from other districts, and just because of word of mouth and how the atmosphere is in our break room, and we've been able to bring some in, but you know, especially when they're not been trained, those are the ones we want to get, the ones that are younger that we can have for 20, 30 years
Sure.
versus the 5 or 10 years.
I don't think I understood what I mean, I've read through this, so what the incentive is.
So the paid training is one of
Okay,
them,
got that.
okay? We already pay for their tests and all that stuff. The only thing that we don't pay for is their fingerprint for the background, which they have to do before we do all the other stuff. But it also has an incentive in there for if one of our employees brings us a candidate and the candidate stays for a full year of driving, then the employee gets,
What is that incentive? That's what I didn't see. How much?
it's in that.
I tried,
I didn't see it in there.
Is it on the form?
because this is the only page, and then we got the form, the candidate referral form, but I
There's
never
no
saw.
payment on there, no amount.
yeah, I don't see it either, Charlie.
I think the whole thing could be redone a little, reworded a little bit
Yeah,
to make it a little bit.
I can't tell what they're
I'm
getting.
not an
Yeah.
expert at that stuff, but,
Well, I think the one form that Renee sent out is not represented in this.
I think there's
no time
three,
limit.
was it 3 documents?
Yeah, we got 2. So probably the important one is the one, what is the incentive?
Yeah, there was,
So if I said, if a bus driver brings in another bus driver and that bus driver works out great in the period year, what is the incentive for that?
there's a dollar amount that we decided, I can't remember
Okay.
the exact dollar amount, but,
Let me,
Well, I think this is a great idea, but we need to know that too.
Charlie, how early can they start, how what age?
they have to have 5 years driving experience.
I've got it right here.
So 21 is the magic number.
Well, if they don't get their license till they're 18. then-
It can't be earlier than 21.
Correct.
That's,
That was my fault, sorry.
So the training, the wage would be $21.32 an hour, and then the incentive would be $250 if they remain for a
Okay.
year.
all right. That's a reasonable amount. I had no idea what we're, is that the only incentive on there?
Those two things.
Okay, so free training makes sense that we don't pay for them for a background check, because if they don't pass that, we don't want to invest any money on it.
Correct.
And then if we get an employee that brings us another bus driver, and that one last year, we give them $250.
So there's two districts in here, Monroe, Snohomish, Riverview, Granite, Mukilteo, and Sultan of the five. Two of them also do a sign-up bonus. And Snohomish's is 500, Mukilteo's is 1,500.
And do you think the 250 is enough to,
I think that it is.
they'll bring in some friends?
Mhm.
Are we short on drivers right now?
We are.
How many?
2.
Every district is short.
Mhm.
Lake Stevens
We're
had a sign
in
hiring
better shape
33.
than most.
How many drivers total
Lake
do we
Stevens
have?
had to cancel transportation for students for all day tomorrow for
Who did?
Lake Stevens.
They had
for
signs
two
up they
routes
needed
'cause they
30-some
are so
bus
short
drivers right for
right now.
school starting.
Is the training include the CDL? Do you have to have a CDL?
That we train for the CDL, take it for the test.
Well, that's a good tool to have.
I think that needs to be promoted more, like,
Yeah.
And we haven't offered anything up to this point, so we're just
Yeah.
trying to be in
that would
the,
be a big,
be in the same room as everybody else, is
Yeah.
what we're trying to do, you know? Because like today, Charlie and I have our standard meeting, and you had mechanics both drove, and the dispatcher drove, and the router
Router
drove.
drove.
Everybody drove. No, the office was empty, just because we had.
Well, it wasn't empty, it was manned with
Would you,
Renee, right?
would you be okay if the board approved this for 1 year? So if somebody brought somebody in within a year, would they extend so that they would still get the bonus? I just want to see if it gets results. If not, I think we need to revisit it and do something differently.
Well, if it isn't enough, I'll be back here.
All right, that's fair. Questions?
I'm good with it.
And it does exclude administrators and stuff like that from, I can't bring my neighbor in and.
Dan has 14 people lined up here
Yeah,
right
this is
now.
for Charlie.
I would make the motion that we approve that.
This is just
A bonus.
A money bonus
Yeah.
thing for a
Yeah.
recruitment.
Yeah.
As these kind of bonuses go, that's pretty frugal.
Yeah. I think so too.
Well, when I look at the stipends list, I really rail at all of this. But, no, I rail at the fact that we can't give the drivers more attention than what we're doing.
Well, and
And
that's
we may
something we can be
revisit
looking
it.
at, and I think that's why I want to revisit this in a year out, because not only do we need to get them, but we need to make certain we're doing things to hold on to them. And why are we losing the ones
We also train them, during the training, once the first hours of their classroom, they also become a type 2 driver, which means that they can drive students not in a bus. So they can in a van, so they can do McKinney-Vento.
Right.
Or onesie-twosie stuff. And some of them do that. We also do, for substitutes, we pay for them to ride along in the routes so that they know the routes, so that if they're called upon, then we don't have a bunch of angry parents because of.
They got a map, once you turn left at the red mailbox.
Right.
I move to approve the bus driver.
I made a motion,
incentive program.
you second?
Second.
And that's rare, but I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Carries. Good. Keep us in the loop.
Okay. Am I done?
Jazz reports.
I think Charlie is done for now. And we're on
Thanks,
to
Charlie.
Everett Community College, college and high school agreement. Dan,
This is the contract for college and the high school, and.
is this different than,
No, standard one to do. The part that is key, let me look and see if it's here. I see it, is what we're currently offering.
But the only problem I had with this is when I went into the agenda item approval of contract, hit that key, it goes to stipends.
Oh, mine doesn't. Goes to stipends?
Yeah, at home that happened to me, let's see,
Just scroll down a little bit more and it'll pop up.
college thing, and then I could.
yeah, it's just off on pages.
And
I
see,
think building a
I
packet
come
is
up with
really easy,
approval-
isn't it?
I come up with approval for stipend.
About 5 years in, you're gonna get really good at this.
Yeah,
If you scroll down,
Mine comes
Well,
up,
I can-
if
I
you go
can-
down to
I can
page,
get the letter, but
if you
this
go
is
to
the
page
form, this is
97,
The board thing.
yeah, it's there, it's just not in the.
it's not lined up.
Mine did fine, I don't know what's going on.
Well, there's two, I know
Just
something I'll
don't-
tell you about later, that we have two versions of it out there, because mine doesn't have the headings on a lot of the pages, so I don't know if I downloaded it early
Is
or
it a
late.
software issue?
I don't know,
Dave?
we'll figure it out. I'll show Dave and we can figure out what it is.
Well, let's not waste any time. on
Right.
this.
Any questions about the agreement, and it's a repeat agreement with Everett Community College to have
Right.
college and high school?
No questions.
Then I'll ask for a motion to approve Everett College,
So moved.
Everett Community College and High School agreement. I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, got that one, we have motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of Turks Work Club. Morgan, you're up, after all this waiting.
Oh, I've been so patient.
Well, we've been entertaining, I'm certain.
Oh, absolutely. Best night of my life.
Yeah.
Good evening, my name is Morgan Butterfield, I am a special education teacher at Sultan High School. This summer I had the opportunity to attend a conference about transition services for Washington State students with disabilities. Transition planning is for students 18 to 21, so post-graduation. It's just to ensure a successful launch into adulthood. These services vary in support from a one-on-one job coach to workshops that help young adults write resumes. In a report produced by the Department of Vocational Resources in conjunction with the Washington Transition Program, that's based at Washington State University, I learned that less than 25% of students with IEPs or 504 plans are gainfully employed or pursuing post-secondary education 1 year post-graduation. When I heard this statistic, I was horrified. Sultan High School has just over 100 students that qualify for special education services. Personally, I am not comfortable with the idea that about 75 of the kids that I work with daily will statistically flounder as soon as they graduate. My parents taught me that once I identify a problem, it behooves me to address it. And so, Turks Work was developed. That's a tough sentence. In partnership with the Department of Vocational Resources and with support from the Washington Transition Program, I've created an after-school club that develops job skills, including self-advocacy and conflict management, as well as resume building, virtual job shadows, career interest inventories, and similar. This club has been already approved by the high school ASB and has the support of numerous staff members and students. I respectfully request that the board approve Turks Work to be implemented at Sultan High School, and I'm happy to take any questions or clarify any concerns.
I think it's great.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming, doing it and stepping up.
I think it's needed.
So, their job skills, how do we do that part of it?
It depends on what their job interest is, so I'll be working closely with Department of Vocational Resources, DVR, to develop basically custom plans for each student based on their interests. So part of the program will be using the MEGI framework. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, sorry, I have too many acronyms. But it sounds very woo-woo, so just hear me all the way through. It's a guided imagery program that helps with self-advocacy, so that was developed by Dr. Anya Scheftel at Washington State University. So a lot of it will be developing kind of the soft skills, just conversation and, some of those little things that we don't really consider job skills. But then also they do, DVR works and does a lot of virtual job shadows, we can do field trips. I mean, really the opportunities and flexibility that we can create with this type of program, pretty endless.
I think,
Yeah, well, anyway, so Paul Douglas here is gonna be in concert with you over this whole thing, right, Paul?
Well, I support it, I think it's a,
Yeah, but I can see some areas where she's gonna need your help.
It would actually be my preference to just let him go do his
Yeah.
job and,
Right.
I appreciate his support endlessly, but
Yeah.
man's plate is tall and wide. I don't need to add more to it.
No, I'm all for this, except for one little thing, I think here in Article 5, where you said the Constitution shall be amended by 2/3 majority vote of the membership, as approved by the Board of Directors, the Sultan School Board.
Mhm.
You're not gonna amend this thing without telling us, I hope.
Correct.
I mean, I need,
It's printed in ink, sir.
So what he's saying is if you, this is the constitution we have now, if
Correct.
2/3 of your group votes to change it,
Then I
that
would be
needs to
back
come
here
back
to
to us,
bother you.
right?
Yep.
So you just need to add as approved by the board or something like that. That would be my.
Are you approving that change now?
Oh, absolutely.
We
Okay,
can,
perfect.
is this, there, I ran a dealership in Monroe years ago, and Monroe School District had a program, and yearly, there would be, a teacher like yourself would bring out a student, and they would do some of our more basic skills, and they would work with staff. And it was pretty entry-level stuff, and it depended upon the skill set that the individual student had. Would this be something similar to that, or no?
It could be. I think what you're describing is more traditional transition planning, so it was probably a student 18 to 21 who had an assigned job coach, who then came and
Yes.
did something, not just entry level, but probably almost menial.
You
And
can
so,
choose that word.
the demographic I'm trying to capture is more like, I hate these labels, so I apologize, but more like the resource room students who are really discouraged by the concept of learning.
Okay.
Some of our more impacted students, so like, Paul was talking, the LRE3 or those self-contained kids, there are more readily available resources, and they have parents that are
Okay.
actively going after that. I'm trying to empower the students
Okay.
to go after
It's a
it
different group.
themselves. Yes.
So move.
I have a motion to approve the Turks Work Club. Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job taking the initiative. Next up, Dan, approval of donation of class of 2024. And in my packet, it doesn't say how much the donation is.
$515, I think.
Yeah.
Did you have the amount?
Nope, it was
No.
missing.
But there's no, 500 doesn't cross any threshold. I thought there was-
515 does.
500, it's gotta come, 501's gotta come.
Yeah, so we're
Yeah,
515.
It's just over the threshold.
Or
so-
$15 over
$15
the
over
threshold.
the threshold.
Okay.
Questions?
No.
All in favor? I need a motion.
No, move, so move.
I have a
Second.
motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thanks, Dan.
People want to give us money for good reason.
All that busy, right?
I think the kids made that those community pages.
And at some point, because of the inflation, we might want to look at that 500 going to 750 or 1,000, because it just makes sense that we would. Next up is approval of a Perkins grant.
So
And
this is a yearly federal career and technical education grant that we bring to you every year. It's very helpful. It's not a lot of money, but it's very helpful.
questions?
I so move, but I have a statement to make.
Okay.
Okay? The thing that we're signing on to is 17 pages long that we agree. So all the allocation.
$900 a page,
Yeah.
what it is.
Now, on those pages are just numerous tabs to other documents like the RCW.
I know there are.
RACs and all that other stuff. And we're agreeing to that.
It's the government, Ed.
I know. So I so move.
The rest of us say no, and then you're on the hook. Well, he approved it. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion second to approve the Perkins grant for this school year. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Motion carries. Next is the Teamsters contract. Dan?
So this, their process, a signed contract from the Teamsters organization doesn't come to us until well after everybody else, just the way their structure works. This was negotiated in the summer, it was finished in, I think, 1 or 2 meetings. Recommend that you approve this, and that's really about all there is to say about it. It's such old news, we've already talked about all the details.
Questions?
Well, I just have one caveat, that this has been reviewed and endorsed by our attorney Lance or some school.
Attorney negotiated it,
Okay, so, but I mean, he's
yes,
Yeah.
basically endorsed this
yeah.
approval, okay.
It helps when they're your lead
When they're-
negotiation
yeah, when
team.
they're the negotiator.
Well, and that's where we don't have personnel law, we just.
I just
are-
want to have that on the, on the record here, so that we're saying that we're approving it because we know our attorney has endorsed it.
Yep.
Okay,
I move
Then
to
I'll-
approve it.
second.
Motion from, let's see, I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion passes. It was Gigi made the motion, Ed made the second.
And then I have the same comment for the next one that Lance has in,
So
is
actually,
aware of it and endorsed it.
Greg Swanson was the negotiator. same thing. This one
Different lawyer, same question answered.
took a lot longer to get through, but it's all within the parameters that we discussed, and there was just more issues to work through, and so we did, and I recommend that you approve it.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
And I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second, approval of 2022-2023 PSE CBA. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Stipends, Dan?
So this is the list of stipends that we bring, fees, et cetera, that we bring before you every year. This is just a little later than it's been in the past, and so I don't think it's as extensive as it's been in the past either. I think there were some things that were removed, and, short of any comments, I recommend that you approve it. Some of these are bound in contract. Some of these are, Mike had mentioned some of them with the grants for the best mentors and the SEA mentors as some of them. Each school has a building leadership team that has 6 members that are paid, and if they choose to have more members, then they have to pay out of their own local budget. There's a number of different ones, and I don't know specifically what you want, other than we've checked and cross-checked and believe that it's true and accurate.
Questions?
A couple here. What does it mean, best grant?
You want to answer that, Mike?
The best grant, we apply to the state to there's a grant that pays for the best program.
You have 30,000, I think.
Yeah, it's 30,000.
See, there's no numbers here, and so, so that person gets that amount of money, and if there's no award.
Not sure, I don't know which,
So they get, which one are you on, Ed?
yeah, just,
Okay, so let's go to Sultan Elementary, I think had the most. There's 6, or no, that's to be determined. So the best grant is on Gold Bar,
Okay.
okay.
Phyllis Tubbs.
I think that goes
They-
to her
They're paid
classroom.
hourly, they're not paid by grant. The best folks
Well,
are.
I mean, she gets a stipend, but it just has no number in there, it just has best grant.
So,
She's a best mentor, and so we pay, everyone in the best program is paid at curriculum rate, and so because that's just the mark that we use. And so it's paid, it's not paid through stipends, though, that's what I don't understand. None of my best mentors are stipend positions.
so if you look up there, mentor, yeah, just run it right across, Phyllis Tubbs, best grant. So we get a grant from the state for $30,000. Whoever the grantees are, maybe you spend the money, maybe you don't. Some of it goes to training,
Yeah.
some of it would go
I
to,
mean, it's in there, it's a stipend with no, it's kind of like the TBD, the to be determined.
She gets paid,
She gets paid her hourly. So
that's
when
just
she
why
works
she's
with-
listed, but she
She
gets
works with
paid hourly.
Danielle, she's a brand new first grade teacher, same grade as she is. She goes in and she works with her, right now, she's probably working with her, I would say, probably anywhere from 2 to 3 half-hour.
But there's no money, I don't know how much money that
Well,
is. I'm
there-
looking at money.
Because Phyllis may work that much for her, and then, but she may also have a second year, so there's no way to disclose how much money she has. She gets paid her curriculum rate, she gets.
She's a
direct
teacher.
Pay, she's a teacher, she gets paid for her.
It almost doesn't need to be on here.
Yeah, I mean, why even have it on this list?
I didn't know they were on there.
I think that's where I want to get to.
All of our building best mentors are approved by the principal. They go through training from the state, and then I pay them outside of the stipend process.
Yeah, so that's,
The
it's,
only
It
mentor.
just shouldn't be on there, then you
Right,
would have had that.
okay.
The the only mentor stipends are the SEA mentors, and those are done by each building.
so we just
SEA
tried to be really, with everything. If you look at the top and the left, supplemental or co-curricular.
Yeah.
And this is just paid in a different way, but anything that's extra above and beyond, we try to include in this list.
yeah.
It made it a little confusing.
It did.
Yeah, and the to be determined, you know, that's kind of like.
$8 billion.
Okay,
Blank
Are you
check.
I
determined?
call the taxi and I go to the airport and he doesn't tell me what it's gonna cost until I get there, you know,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And then the other thing I kind of, well, maybe Dan can answer this, but, I guess Aubrey's gonna give $100 to all the teachers that attend this, meeting, but, curriculum night, but those that don't attend, so it says $100 and $105 in there, times the number of teachers that show up.
That's an SEA contract issue, probably doesn't even need to be here.
Okay, so.
That's another one of
That's
those
another one
confusing.
that's.
So,
okay.
that part, I guess, we haven't cleaned up. That is something that's part of the regular teacher's contract. So Gold Bars get the same.
Well, it's confusing us old people, you know?
Okay, get you, I get it.
That's why I'm not confused.
Wow.
There you go, that's good. Ouch.
Any other questions?
No.
Then I'll ask for a motion to approve the stipends as included in our packet.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second,
I have a motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Put me down as an abstain, because I've always argued about stipends, and I need to keep my position on that.
There you go. All right. Next up, tabled first reading policy 3319.
So this is one.
I read the notes of why it was tabled last
Yeah,
time.
it's and I think now that we've got Paul here, we can have Paul help with the restraint, isolation, and other, we just brought it back.
Yeah, I know, but the one thing that I mentioned about this particular policy, I wanted to hear from the teachers and the administrators that were gonna be out there restraining the kids and how they felt about the language that was in this.
Okay.
That was my request last time, I think, if you
Okay.
recall. And so, I'm not, I really don't have any problems with the way it's worded, as long as the people that are gonna have to do it agree, and that I know that.
I think they know in those positions that unfortunately this can be part of the task for doing
So
that.
Paul is the
We've changed
district trainer,
somehow.
right?
A little bit.
So I can answer that a little bit. So when we do the training, like Dan said, I'm a trainer for that, and I certify them. You have to sign an agreement before you can take the class, that you do in fact know how to use these, the holds, and we try not to use restraints, but so they sign off that they in fact know that they'll be asked to do that. I only give them the training in holds that they can actually do, holds or restraints. There's several holds and restraints we don't train staff on, because we don't want them to use that, because they might injure themselves or students, so I don't train them on those. They do understand that when they use a restraint or hold, we have documentation that must be completed. As long as they are using the holds appropriately or attempting to use them appropriately, they're covered from a risk management perspective, and they're covered by right response.
So if we have, do all the teachers in
No.
all the schools, so we have something on the outside of the classroom developed, and a teacher has not had the training, is that teacher just gonna not engage, or?
No, you're covered under those circumstances, an emergency situation, you can intervene. I mean, you're still covered under indemnity from the school district on this side, if it's an emergency. So they can
That's
intervene. I mean, what we see at the high school unfortunately happens more frequently.
Yeah.
There's a fight in the bathroom, and a teacher steps in and tries to break up that fight. You know, that's not, even a restraint and isolation or restraint can be used on general ed students and used appropriately. Most of the general ed staff are not trained because they don't deal with that on a regular basis. But if they step in order to separate the students, which they do frequently, they're still protected from, indemnity-wise.
Well, they're protected if, in the eyes of the beholder, the school determines that the teacher didn't go beyond whatever the parameters were for that particular
Right.
situation.
Mhm.
And that's where we get into trouble.
Right.
I don't know that we can write a policy where it fixes that.
Well,
Yeah.
no, but I know.
Everybody has their cameras out filming it anyway.
Right,
just-
yeah.
Right.
And there's terrible examples out there of staff making horrendous mistakes, and there's video of, it's sad, but, they did what they had to do in the situation. And I think even if you do everything right, you still have the risk of somebody saying you didn't do it right.
But my original question was, okay, the teacher population out here is aware of the change in this stuff and their part, and they agree to what we're going to pass here tonight.
They do, and each school has a response team
Okay.
that they work together. So if there is a student that's, let's just say we have a student that's out of control in a classroom, teachers are taught to evacuate the classroom, and that response team is to show up, and those are the trained folks to help de-escalate the situation.
Well, I assume my question has been addressed, and it's a positive answer, and so
First reading.
First reading, I shall move.
I have a motion. Thanks, Deb. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
So maybe what we can do is to make sure we got our bases covered is give it to the group to read.
Yeah. This is what we're past, this is the first reading, we have second reading and approval next.
See, I
this
did
week.
not do that. Because Paul's here and I wanted him to speak to this. 'cause he
I think we got to the answer,
Yeah, well, you got to my answer.
yeah. And this is that touchy,
And we get another,
Not fun
we
stuff.
got now to the next meeting for anybody that really didn't voice their opinion to voice their opinion,
Yeah.
so, okay.
next up, policies. Let's get, yeah, we have policies for our next business meeting, policy 2004 accountability goals and policy 3224 student dress. Everybody might want to read those. I think student dress changed from may to will, there's not a lot of changes there.
Well, that may be one where we want to add some stuff.
I had some
Just
questions
because
about that.
there's, that's, I kind of moved this there and I need to do a little more background check. But we've got,
So maybe be prepared to have discussion in first reading next time, because it's a short policy, we didn't change almost anything. I think,
I will get some more information from the principals. The first reading is not until over a month away.
Right.
So we wanted to give it to you ahead of time, but we've got, if things aren't defined enough, we get kind of, we get pushback on some stuff. And so we need to make sure that we're covering the issues that are preventing.
well, that's one that I think we
Presenting
should spend a little bit of time making certain we have what we want.
Yeah.
Well, there is a line in there that says, the students will meet, 90% of the students will meet state assessment. And,
Talking about the dress code.
Yeah, I was talking about the dress code.
no,
That's what I was
That's what
talking
he's
about.
talking about, is the dress code.
You're talking about accountability goals, maybe.
no, I'm talking about accountability goals.
Yeah, and I was talking about dress code.
Oh, you were talking about the dress code.
They're both important, they're different for different reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
Accountability is obviously very.
The first reading is not until November 28th.
No, but I just saw that line and I thought, and I've been going on the report card thing and,
We have a ways to go in some of those areas to get to 90, is that what you're saying? That is true. Next up, we have superintendent's report. You have quite a number of things there you want to.
Yeah, I've got to put in a little PowerPoint so I can just show you and share some thoughts and, go up to the top, if you could. First one is just, a growing danger of fentanyl. We've all heard about it. I hear and see of schools doing, presentations and having an evening and doing things in school. I think I mentioned in my last report, the Keep a Clear Mind program. I think that kicked off this week. That's only grades 4, 5, and 6. But almost any time you turn on the news or listen to something,
It's in the
there's,
news every day.
yeah, fentanyl is a growing
Every day.
problem. And so I found one document I asked Kayla to bring up, and this is one I didn't send you. But if you could put that up there, Kayla, that would be great. Colored one.
So that
This one.
I read this, yeah.
And if you go down, I think this is the one I read, where they found some of this stuff in candy boxes.
East Coast,
Skittles.
most of them.
Skittles, that's the one I saw.
Most was East Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in Connecticut.
Yeah, that's right, Connecticut. I knew it was East Coast, but.
Well, let me just share something with you here in Everett this afternoon, apparently. They found 3,000 grams of heroin. Well, the owner of the apartment went into this because of a eviction kind of a thing, so the cops didn't even know this was going on. The sheriff's department didn't know, and the owner of the building called the sheriff's department. They came in, and this is in Everett, and they found 3,000 grams of heroin. It's about 500 grams per pound, so, it's a couple of pounds.
Yeah.
There was 2,500 grams of fentanyl powder, but there was 100,000 of fentanyl pills, M30 pills. 100,000 in Everett. And this was just discovered accidentally
Today?
today.
So that's just a tip of an iceberg. It's every, it is
They
every.
had kind of left it behind.
And my original, my original thing in this was, we got Halloween coming, and what can we do students and families that we know, to get the word out there about this whole candy thing on Halloween. And I do know that somebody else brought up that there are test kits like the
Yeah, I know.
COVID thing, where you can dissolve some of it
And they're free from a lot of places.
yeah, apparently. There are some places that give them away, and then there are other places that, I think the VA wanted to sell them to you, but some of the other places, I think Providence.
I just read about this morning.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, we have Halloween coming up, and what can we do for our children and parents here in this
If we
community?
get test strips, that might not, you know.
So we can-
Well, I mean, just get the awareness out there, let's publish something.
I agree, and I remember as kids, my parents checked the K, make sure there were no razor blades in my my apples.
Yeah.
It's on record. I know. But you know what I mean, this is a deadly scare, because in one fentanyl dose and
These
it's.
100,000 pills are killers for kids.
Does our sheriff's department have a canine?
We do. I can certainly
That's a
reach out to.
A free bring your bag of candy by, and the dog can smell your bag of candy.
Yep.
Good thinking.
900 kids and
Well,
one dog.
if parents want
Well,
to, that's
the dog's gonna
fine.
be busy.
I mean,
It's-
that's what those dogs are trained for.
I think it would be great, like at trunk or treat.
Yep.
That's
You know,
where I got my
walking
900
through.
figure from.
Yeah, you just, as your kid leaves trunk or treat, there's a dog there smelling. I mean, it seems like the ones at the airport, I don't know how many people walk by them and the dog's friendly, but if he sits down by you, you're going to prison, I think, you know, and I think they have the ability to smell a large number, but you're right, it'd be probably 900 kids. It's worth it, it's worth the effort.
I think just notification and, it'd be nice if our SRO would engage in that, maybe. I haven't had any response from Adam Fortney, but he's been kind of busy lately, I guess.
I'll call our SRO tomorrow and talk to them about it, see what, this is something that, I am aware of, I just see it now and again, I hear what happened in Everett, and it's something I worry about.
I think you have a drug dog at trunk or treat on Main Street, that dog might hit
Two
on
years
something.
ago, I think, maybe it was a year ago or something, I got a call from a parent in Mukilteo. Was just calling school superintendents, and, and I talked to her for a while, and she lost a son to it. And he was 20, college kid,
Yep.
fooling around, and, their lives will never be the same.
And the one thing about trunk or treat, and I was talking to Anne Marie about this the other night, we know all our stuff, but your trunk is there, and you're handing out candy, and some kid comes along and puts the stuff in your trunk without
Right,
your
incorrect.
noticing or knowledge, and then you're passing it out. So it's not just safe because you went to Costco and you bought the candy and, that sort of thing.
If we made it known that there was gonna be a drug dog or two on Main Street, there might be one or two people I've seen up there before that might not show up for trunk or treat,
Oh, absolutely,
which wouldn't be a bad
yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
So a few years ago up at the high school, I don't know who put it on, there was an evening that parents could come up and kids too if they wanted to. And they went over dabs and, the e-cigarettes and all the different stuff that was going out and the chemicals that was in. It was very, very educational and informative. And it might not be a bad idea to have an evening to revisit all the more new pertinent things.
Yeah, things are changing.
Things are changing, and this was, I think, 3 or 4 years, I think it was, Don was like in 9th grade, we went up. And there was not a ton of people, but the people that went it was really good, and they had examples of what things look like. And there's even more stuff on the market now that I have to go ask Don what things are, because I don't know. And unfortunately, he knows to,
I will inquire about that.
But it was.
I went to one at the high school probably 15 years ago, and it literally had a big piece of plywood and had everything from like peyote and mescaline to the
That's
different
great.
pills and what they look like, and I'm naive to it. I know what ibuprofen looks like.
Nowadays, we could put it on Zoom and then also put the video on the district page, because not everybody's gonna wanna go to the high
Yeah.
school, so.
Or can.
Yeah.
But
And,
it was a really good evening. I think Don went with us too.
Yeah, it's a
Just
good thing to
to
do.
hear
and
the
we only have a
chemicals
couple
when
days.
you,
Yeah,
when
we can
they
do
get
that.
heated up.
Two different things. I think we need to get it out to the public, remind them about Halloween. I think it would be great if we had a drug dog that, I think that's a great idea. If we could get some free test kits for people that want, and have them available. If we do nothing and one child is injured by it, I wish we would have done something. So,
I'll put out a letter, I was gonna do it this week anyway, I'll just speed it up and do it tomorrow.
yeah.
And I'll mention the fentanyl, and I'll see what I can do about test strips and a dog at trunk or treat.
Yeah.
The dog would be, if we advertise that there's a dog there,
Might be empty.
No, you didn't mean that. There might be one or two people that don't
gotcha.
show up. Which would be good, and it would alleviate, I think, your worry that you're right, because somebody could come up with Snickers bars and, or
whatever
whatever.
truck, you know.
You have other things on your
Yeah,
superintendent?
go ahead and go next one. Here's the SBAC scores. This is from last spring. And I don't know, I was reading in, I read it in a few spots, but the most recent spot was the Washington Examiner did a, education suffered badly the last couple of years. Math scores dropped as far as they've ever dropped, reading scores, et cetera. This is from last spring. That's where we're at.
Well, the Sultan math scores is about the same as it was pre-COVID.
Elementary?
Sultan High, that's the actually.
They were much higher than that.
14.5, I think that's lower than it's been.
Yeah, they did one so last year, they had to take two tests.
Pre-COVID, 10th grade was 14.5%.
That's right now.
No, that was 2020, or 2019. In
Not-
2021, the 9th grade was 14.9, and the 11th grade was 8.6.
That's not accurate.
That's off the state site.
Ninth grade don't test in math.
Well, I mean, that was.
That doesn't happen.
No.
I mean,
Maybe the data is saying what the ninth graders
Well,
of that year
yeah,
did when
it's-
they were. the
It
year
said
they
published
took it.
2020, and then it was updated in 2021.
What was
But
the site?
that's the educational ERDC. That's the.
if you go to OSPI,
Yeah, report card.
report card will
Yeah.
tell you everything. But
Yeah.
some of the data they have,
It's
they
old.
haven't updated.
Right.
So there's things called, and I didn't add it here just because it would confuse it, but there's a thing called high growth percentile. And it's like, if I'm a kindergartner and I enter at 5-year-old, I'm in a certain growth percentile. And so I can show you what those are for there, and so when you look at how our kids are performing next to similar groups, some of ours are growing quite a bit in the basis to where they are. But I don't think we've ever had an 8%, I just don't know where the data's coming from.
No. Go to
You
ER.
guys get together and,
Just go on the OSP website.
I was
and
there
then
today.
On the right-hand column, where it has all the resources, go down where it says ERDC, and it'll give you a direct link to that.
Okay. I will compile what I believe they are, going back to like 2015.
Yeah, they have the graphs over the years, and it doesn't change that much, although some of the things were going down even pre-COVID. I know the math looked like it was taking a nosedive in 2019. But it doesn't matter, because it was taking the whole graph, the whole line is below 25% for 5 years.
so I think that discussion will lead us to what are we gonna do differently than what we've been doing, so
Exactly.
that we can get to some respectable numbers.
So that's why I put kind of so I sort of addressed that down there. That's where some of the PLC work comes in. Where you certainly, there's 4 basic questions. What do you want them to learn? How do they know they learned it? What do you do if they didn't learn it? Et cetera. And so skills interventions right now, what we added into the schedule at Sultan High School, because that's where the big struggle is coming off of middle school and high school, is there's 2 intervention classes and there's a targeted math tutoring. And so for the skills interventions, they actually break down the skills needed to pass, you know, if you take a 10th grade test, which is where math is at the high school level, it's
Right.
taken at 10th grade, what do you need skill-wise to be able to do that? Well, we're doing that for algebra, we're doing that for geometry, doing that for all of those courses. And that's the track we want to be on, so that if a kid, it's one thing to say, well, we came in and we didn't do very well, but, okay, now what? How do we know what a
Do
student
we have a
needs?
sequence problem, or do we have a scope?
A little bit of both of that, and I would say part of what you see at Sultan Elementary, where they didn't, you know, theirs were much higher even before that, but they're pretty high in comparison, is they're probably really aligned standards-wise. And, you know, and if somebody doesn't pass, they go down and break the standard down. That's what we need to do K-12.
Yes. And it might not be a bad idea to have the principal that's got that aligned involved in discussions with the other administrators if it can be helpful to them.
And there's been
Because
a lot of ongoing training in the area of math. for
It's sad that we are looking at our, 60% science at Sullivan Elementary, that's a great score on that page, but relative to, just a little more than half of the kids are passing that science, and that's the best number up there.
Yeah, the 60%, I'm not even proud of the 60%.
That's what I was trying to say in
Yeah.
a roundabout way.
So if I go to 2017-18, Sultan High School, math was 27. Not something to be greatly excited about, but it
Right.
wasn't.
I think you guys need to get together on it, so we make certain you're on, and then get us as much data as we can look at. I don't know that me knowing what the score is, I need to know what we're doing to make certain that we're not at 14.5%, and that's not a fix in 1 year, obviously, but it needs to be going in an upward fashion, and now that we're at post-COVID, hopefully we can do that.
Yes. So,
I think we can all agree those numbers are not.
no,
unreasonable.
it doesn't, nobody feels good about it. Nobody does, absolutely nobody. And so, we're addressing, they need to be addressed, and we're in the spot of doing that.
And this is a tough time. We still have kids struggling with social emotional issues because of the absence of classroom learning for 2 years. Those kids are still, it's not politically correct, but they're, screwed up a lot of
Well,
their
we know,
learning.
we know that they're almost at least a year and a half behind.
Yeah, and a lot of
Going
it
from
is
fifth grade to
emotionally,
fifth grade.
Seventh graders are like fifth graders.
This is
and-
across, I just read today, it's across the country. It's-
Yeah.
Everyone has gone down.
Well, some states aren't as bad,
Yeah.
and every state had to deal with COVID
Were
in
they
different
open
ways.
or were they closed?
Yeah, well,
That's
some of them were open.
Yeah, the ones that were open all the time
Did better.
did better. Duh, it makes sense. If they didn't, then what are we doing, having school, if you don't do
Well,
that?
having-
Well, I heard nobody didn't drop. I just didn't know what, because I was gonna say, okay, who was open and who wasn't?
The states that were open more
Uh-huh.
didn't drop as much.
Okay, but they still dropped.
Some of them were flat, but most, the country dropped.
Yeah. All right.
Next time.
Yep. So here's, I'd sent you guys an article about, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. There's a chapter in the book that Paul and myself and the administrators are working on, and it's about PLCs.
Right.
And it's about aligning the district, and so I just put some thoughts up there about the leadership superintendent board component of that. And I don't know, anybody have a chance to read that chapter?
I read part of it.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
I liked it. I liked, what kind of struck me was the superintendent school board relationship, kind of being a little, like, more hands-on, it seemed like, as far as coming up with the policies and things like that.
Certainly what that proposes and what I'm proposing is that we sort of rework how we've been involved. I think we were growing towards that,
Yeah.
but COVID put a halt to that, and we weren't even really where I wanted to go. But I think doing the work within this would help us, and I just shared some thoughts out there. We as a leadership team can really connect the rest of the district to the why, and make sure that we're aligned. That's just a thought. What from our perspective would be tight, as far as structure, and what is a little more flexible, develop a written, updated superintendent school board plan. so the goals and the benchmarks are identified, and, you know, move from just hoping that you get good results from the board level, because you're not as intimately involved, to planning and knowing what to expect.
One thing that struck out was, the leaders cannot expect or require behaviors and actions until they themselves are clear about the best practices, expectations. So that's something coming onto the school board. My question was, you know, what are our, we talked about goals, you know, but what are they, things like that. So I think the more we know the goals and the expectations, the easier it is for you and for those to go down to others.
This has been an odd time to come on the
Yeah.
board as well,
Yeah.
because we all had an introduction where it was in person, and, you know, you started, and here we are, you know, having these remote Zoom meetings. and- So I think you mentioned it in here that we should try to schedule a board, and maybe board and administration type of retreat's the word, but, you know, a get-together so that we can maybe pick 2 or 3 topics. I think this is a good one where we're aligning what we're doing. I don't know how soon that could be done, but I think that has to be, we were working on a date and everybody was really busy. I think you mentioned busy in October.
So I think we were trying to get it defined in September, and then, and people just said, hey, it's just too busy.
Yeah, and then I ended
And
up
then
missing them.
here we are, you know, getting towards the end of October, but I think part of this means that we will do some professional development together, training together around that stuff. You know, it means that we agree that we'll participate in that, so that we know from a leadership perspective, you know, what is our role in a leadership PLC? How, you know, what's the board's role, what's superintendent's role? How do we set these goals? How do we communicate it? What are the, you know, what are the written expectations? And what do we do to really put definition and make it be heart and center of the district?
I'm going to Redmond Wednesday night. You going to, or anybody else going, are you going? Or Ed, are you going?
To what?
It's this training that we're required to do, and they put it together on one night, so we don't have to spend 7 hours or 10
Well,
hours.
the reason why I just kind of said, hey, it's close, you know, and again, it is what it is, but we'll be able to chat about it on the way to that.
And it's, I don't know, Ed, if you have, it's Wednesday night, we're leaving here at 5?
About 5. I'll find out for sure how long
It's-
it'll take tomorrow.
Yeah, look at
It's
how,
like Washington
it
High
might
School.
take an hour and 15 minutes to get from, we don't want to be late.
Maybe
Starts
we
at
better,
6.
maybe we better leave at 4:30. How about that?
Is it gonna be okay for 4:30? Yeah, traffic.
I don't think I'm gonna be there.
And that's fine. That's
So we can start the conversation with a couple of those, and the state law allows us to travel.
There's a written provision in the law that board members can travel together, they can go to training together, and just as long as you're not making decisions. You're not gonna be-
We have a trouble making a decision in a formal setting. I don't think we're gonna do it in a van on the way to that meeting, but maybe we can discuss how we can, you know, just the dynamics or the logistics of where and when we can do that.
And I think, you know, what this takes is it takes time. I mean, it really does. We can't do a one and out or a little bit here and a little bit there. You do some pretty intensive work, and then it's ongoing. So that we can really make this, you know, part of the personality of the district.
Well, I'd like to see a retreat actually happen, because we talk about it a lot. And
Well, we've had lots of them, but not in the last
Yeah.
couple years.
Last one we had that I recall was out at Wallace Falls.
Yep.
And 2 weeks later, we were closed down.
'Cause we talked about, I think, the first meeting I attended,
Yeah.
but it just kind of keeps going out. I think we need to like do it, make a
Yep.
date, do it.
I'm very flexible, so I will have Kayla reach out to you tomorrow and try to find some times. We've typically done a Sunday, as that works for everybody, but I can do whatever. I can do it during the week, I can, you know, whenever you want to do it.
Yeah, send us out I don't know what that survey method, so we can choose weekends or Sundays that can work.
Doodle poll?
Doodle poll, and then if you could let me know, if you wanna throw me an email and, like, if we're waiting on one person, like if Cindy hasn't does it, I can rattle her, or Ed, just remind them so we get it in, the dates quick. You know, everybody a few days to answer that and see what your calendar is. I do have some things in the next month or two, but I can make several Sundays available. What else you got?
Other items, Transportation Cooperative, I actually saw the building permit today, so it's there. can chat with Ed a little bit. He hasn't seen any equipment there, but I know he's
Are you
anxious.
gonna give us a call when there's equipment on site, Ed?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I didn't drive by today, so you say, there is a big scraper or something, but that belongs to somebody.
So a guy in the back corner
Yeah.
actually has a business doing that, so that's his.
Yeah. Well, it's gonna be ours when we doesn't move it.
We're gonna build the fence around it first. And so the White Hatter, that's just, I didn't mention that, but that's an internet safety kind of a deal and student behavior on internet, and so we're gonna bring him in again, and middle school, high school, and then we send links and videos and stuff at home to watch, and just another effort to try to, make kids aware of what they're engaging in when they're doing, unfortunately, the guy's in Canada and he doesn't do in-person stuff yet, if you can believe it, but he's still got a really good.
Canada's wide open now, isn't it?
I thought so, apparently not, it is, but apparently not for him. I don't
Fair
know.
enough.
If he's not vaccinated, the United States will not allow him to come across the border.
I didn't ask that question.
I just found that piece of
Oh, I didn't know
information
that.
out this morning.
We can go to Canada though now, right? I can just
We
drive
can
up,
go, yeah.
international driver's license.
Yeah.
and
But they
right,
can't come here?
If they're not vaccinated, they can't come here.
Okay.
And I didn't know that, I just read that this morning.
I missed that news article.
But it wasn't very big.
So the policy update is, there was a question, I just wanted to answer it, I just put it here. I think one of the questions that came up for policy 3231 was, policy update.
Skip a few.
I did. No, there's two different things.
Oh, I see your sharing.
So the policy update has to do with, we had an error, I think, didn't we, Kayla?
The word transcript being added to the existing policy.
Maybe I wrote that down twice. I think what we wanted to do is implement fines for those that didn't, they didn't pay their fees, and so we wanted to hold the transcript, not implement fines, but hold them.
Right.
Can't do it.
Okay.
It's another one of those things that's similar to paying for lunches. They removed our ability to.
We used to be able to hold it, now
We
we
used to be
can't.
able to do it. Can't do it anymore.
Well, at some point, we're going to see a lot more of this activity. That's why this lunch thing is daunting, because the parents that can pay, if they find out everybody else is going to find a way around it, why would I have to pay then? So,
We still do. Hey, Dan. I
not,
saw a
not
transcript.
everybody's as good as, you know what I'm saying?
But I hate all the texts that say, oh, you're $1 over.
A lot of districts have gone to going ahead and just doing free lunches for everybody.
Well, that's why I think knowing how much it would cost
I would
starts
love
that
to do that.
conversation. I would be willing to listen
We
to
would
it.
save
We might. And I think that's the direction we need to go. You can't learn if you're hungry, and if a kid's worried about his parents not having the money to feed, kids already have enough to
lunch.
Hey, Dan, I saw a transcript from, I think it was Lake Stevens yesterday that said, unofficial fines owed. So they gave the kid the transcript, but they tagged it with unofficial tags of fines owed.
So maybe you can give an unofficial, and they don't give them an official one. I thought
Oh,
they had
an
that anyway.
unofficial transcript.
I actually read the,
A lawyer got
what do they call
involved in
it, the
this.
bill summary. I read it, and I don't have it linked to the packet, but I have it linked in my,
Well, it's a rough thing. You don't want to, there's different fines and different reasons, and some kids, we just need to give the transcript, but there's times when people need to be held accountable, and if you don't learn it by the time you graduate from high school, you're gonna be hard pressed as an adult to learn it, or it'll be a lot harder lesson when you do.
House Bill
But
1176.
if they don't learn it by the time it's transcript time, you ain't gonna teach them.
Well, there's some truth to that too. They actually need to know by 8 years old, and if they don't have the responsibility by then, it's smaller, but. Board meeting date correction?
Yeah, Kayla, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, so, and I was reviewing the board meeting dates and went into 2023, and I had August 21st, I believe, but it's August 22nd, so
Okay.
I.
It's a Tuesday instead of a Monday.
Yeah, we could probably change
Or
it.
it
Nobody
was a
votes.
Tuesday, but all the dates are still Monday, no Tuesdays.
Oh, okay. Oh, so the number was just,
Yes.
okay, that's easy. Policy update, you've talked about that, I think. Parent-teacher conferences?
November 2nd through 4th, I think I mentioned it in my Friday, Sunday letter, whatever. Starts 2nd, 3rd of the heavy days, 4th if we don't have folks there. And so,
Are those gonna be Zoom again, or?
combination, you know, I think, I can't tell you to know exactly, but Zoom has, in this particular environment, proved to be pretty successful. Because if you've got a 10 or a 15-minute window, you can click right into it and people are right there and you're not, you know, a parent that's gotta run in from Everett, sometimes it's easier to do the conference wherever they can do it. It is, but it's a combination of two.
And you can do it from your cell phone on break
Do it
if
from
you
your
have an
cell phone.
evening shift or something.
So that's the one place where the remoteness has helped.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
Executive session,
You guys, you wanna stay, Paul?
Yeah, I can stay with that one.
He's part of that whole process, he runs that.
of the student advocate?
Yeah.
So what do you think, 15 minutes?
going home and going to bed. Good night.
Yeah, I wanna go too.
What would you rather?
Can we go too?
Put it off.
Well, we can talk in a different way if you want, it's fine, it's up to you.
Just a comment about the original intent was the student advocate, and I don't.
10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, 10 minutes.
Takes me about 12 to drive home, so.
I guess you'd be waiting.
Maybe make it 12.
Holly wanted to make sure we know that there's cookies on the back table.
Oh.
I don't know, I saw you
there's-
somewhere,
So
but
that works out
you
to
can
you
make it
because
to 10.
I'll give us a 5-minute break to use the restrooms and everything, and then we'll start a 10-minute meeting. So,
Oh,
does it not need to be?
cookies, no, I don't know
Well, I
how,
think
I don't know.
Dan has something for us too, doesn't he?
I think it's all types.
Oh, is that right?
I think it's the same thing.
No, I'm gonna go to Boys.
Okay, so we're gonna start, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn a regular meeting at 9:32. I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
And we will reconvene our meeting at 9:37 and end at 9:47. That is our goal. And that gives you enough time to get home, don't speed. Yep, and now we need to turn the recorder off. Out of executive, I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries, and I call the meeting adjourned.
Who first?
I was gonna oppose.
Oh.
First.
Yeah, Fred first.
Cindy second.
Cindy second, and then I just